Chapter 1869, Dark Witch's Tower. Chapter 1869, Dark Witch's Tower. As the magic barrier protecting ancient Rock City disappeared, the distant spectating players' mouths fell wide open. They simply could not bring themselves to believe that the three heavily injured divine magic dragons actually destroyed such a powerful defensive magic array. Damn it! How is this possible? Beast Emperor's complexion became incredibly gloomy when he saw the magic barrier disappearing. The magic barrier was the protective canopy of ancient Rock City. Without it, anybody could enter and leave the city freely, as well as rain destruction upon the city. Before Beast Emperor could react, Aqua Rose raised her staff and commanded, "Miniature ballistas, advance. Attack ancient Rock City with everything you've got." In the next moment, all 200 miniature ballistas started closing in on ancient Rock City. When Heaven's Burial took control of ancient Rock City, the guild had repaired and constructed defensive structures around the city. However, after the evil god's temple took over, as evil demons and evil beasts lacked the knowledge and ability to control these defensive structures, these things all became decorations. As a result, the miniature ballistas could approach ancient Rock City with impunity. Ancient Rock City soon entered the miniature ballistas' attack range. Show! 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 Immediately, 200 exploding arrows flew into the sky and pelted down on the buildings inside ancient Rock City. Following which, a series of blasts reverberated throughout the city. Just one volley of arrows already flattened many buildings in the city's outer area. They dare! Beast Emperor felt his heart bleed when he saw many of the accommodations for evil demons getting razed. He angrily commanded all of his evil beasts and evil demons, "Go! Destroy every one of those ballistas." At this moment, he no longer cared about the defense of the city. All he cared about was the destruction of Zero Wing's miniature ballistas. Meanwhile, due to the miniature ballistas' attacks, the evil beasts and evil demons controlled by NPCs belonging to the evil god's temple also took action. These powerful monsters joined the evil beasts and evil demons under Beast Emperor's control in charging toward Zero Wing's army. Suddenly, a swarm of monsters could be seen rushing toward Zero Wing's army. This scene made the Zero Wing members handling the miniature ballistas shudder involuntarily. However, Aqua Rose remained utterly unfazed by this situation, immediately ordering the activation of the movement-type defensive magic array. A moment later, a magic barrier enveloped the entire army. Miniature ballistas, focus on those monsters. Everyone else, coordinate your attacks with the ballistas. Flying Shadow, your group will deal with those mythic monsters. Everyone in Zero Wing's army responded quickly and started executing Aqua Rose's commands. Although the monsters were numerous and high-leveled, their side also possessed a defensive magic array. As long as the defensive magic array held, these evil demons and evil beasts could not hurt them. Not to mention, their side also had the firepower of 200 miniature ballistas. For a time, the miniature ballistas could be seen continuously firing exploding arrows at the approaching evil demons and evil beasts, the resulting blasts even sending the great lords stumbling backward. The lords that got struck were immediately placed in a heavily injured state. As for the chieftains, they got killed with just a few shots. In the meantime, Zero Wing's members were also launching attacks in a frenzy from inside the defensive magic array. However, despite Zero Wing's fierce offensive, the evil demon and evil beast army showed no signs of stopping. They assaulted Zero Wing's defensive magic array relentlessly, depleting its energy reserves. As the evil beasts and evil demons died one after another, the energy reserves of Zero Wing's defensive magic array also declined rapidly. This forced Aqua Rose to replenish its energy repeatedly using magic crystals. For a time, the sounds of roars, slaughter, and explosions became the main theme of this hilly land. In this battlefield, an individual's strength was extremely insignificant. Only the magical class players capable of using large-scale spells were slightly more useful than the average player. The magnificent battle stupefied the spectating players. The dark players, who had been planning to ambush Zero Wing's army, simply stood still right now, none of them daring to join the fray. After all, the level of this battle exceeded their understanding of battles between players. In this conflict, individual techniques were absolutely meaningless. If they dared charge into the battlefield, let alone reaching Zero Wing's army, just crossing the miniature ballista's field of fire was already plenty difficult. With the defensive magic array up, they wouldn't even get to touch Zero Wing's members. They would only become live targets for Zero Wing's members if they entered the fray now. Meanwhile, as Zero Wing's army was fighting a war of attrition with Beast Emperor, Shifeng's team of 1,000 arrived at a location a short distance from the Dark Witch's Tower. The Dark Witch's Tower stood next to a small lake inside a valley. The environment around the tower was considerably good. In fact, this place was originally a nice town. Unfortunately, an undead Great Wizard had targeted the town and turned it into a place of death. The Great Wizard had also specifically constructed the Dark Witch's Tower here to research death magic. As more time passed, the town here became a locus for the dark forces. At this point, it was already a resting place for dark players in the Or Empire. When Shifeng's team moved within 3,000 yards of the Dark Witch's Tower, sirens in the town suddenly rang, putting every player inside the town on high alert. Someone actually dares approach the gathering place of us dark players? It should be a team that lost their way. With so many of us dark players here, who would possibly dare approach this place willingly? Lost their way? Whatever. This is a good opportunity. I haven't completed my kill quest for today. It's not a bad idea to use these players as a sacrifice. The dark players inside the Dark Witch's Tower all started laughing and chatting merrily, convinced that this team of players was a bunch of fools to have actually stumbled upon the Dark Witch's Tower. After all, these players had not investigated which places normal players should avoid in the Or Empire. As the dark forces were relatively weak on the continent of God's domain, the dark forces gathering spots in neutral maps would all have alarms set up to help the gathering spots residents to take precautions to protect themselves. These alarms would give out a warning when over 100 normal players or NPCs entered a certain range of the gathering spot. They really came. A black-clad man covered in bandages, who was enjoying a glass of wine in the town's bar, could not help but smile when he heard the town's alarms going off. He then turned to look at the beautiful woman dressed in dark blue robes sitting beside him and asked, "Will Commander Spirit take action first, or shall I do the honors? Although I very much wish to repay Zero Wing for what it did to my adventurer team, I am more curious about how capable the treasured apostle nurtured by Beast Emperor is," Veiled Spirit replied, smiling as she looked at the bandaged man beside her. Nowadays, Beast Emperor was extremely famous among dark players. After all, he controlled an army of evil beasts and evil demons, a force that nobody could afford to underestimate. Meanwhile, although Dust Edge himself did not possess much fame, Beast Emperor had praised him highly and even agreed to cooperate with Dark Soul so long as the Alliance provided Dust Edge with as many resources as possible. Seeing as Beast Emperor was willing to invest so many resources in a single person, it was obvious just how much Beast Emperor valued Dust Edge's potential. Beast Emperor and Dark Soul had been acquainted with each other for quite some time already, yet Dark Soul had yet to dig up any information on Dust Edge even now. Zero Wing's arrival presented Veiled Spirit with a good opportunity to witness Dust Edge's abilities. She naturally wouldn't let it go to waste. "Fine, then let's treat this as the beginning of the mutual trust between our two sides," Dust Edge said, nodding. He then raised his wine glass and added, "They should be very close to reaching the town walls now. Let us head out, as well." After saying so, Dust Edge stood up and left the bar. Veiled Spirit and the dozen or so subordinates that came with her followed after him. Chapter 1870 Hell Tank's Might. Chapter 1870 Hell Tank's Might. A large number of dark players had gathered in the Dark Witch's Tower's watchtower, gazing down at Zero Wing's members as they fell into formation in the distance. What? They actually planned to attack the Dark Witch's Tower? They're insane. Hundreds of NPCs guard the town, not to mention the defense turrets and arrow towers. Repelling a 1,000-man team isn't even a warm-up. The dark players could not help but laugh, ridiculing Zero Wing as they watched Shifeng and his companions prepare for the assault. Although the Dark Witch's Tower was a very small town, it had robust defenses. Not only did the town have defensive structures, but it also had a defensive magic array. Furthermore, thousands of dark players occupied the town. Even an army of tens of thousands of elite players would fall swiftly if it tried to attack the town, let alone a 1,000-man force. Even a superpower would have to pay a hefty price to destroy the Dark Witch's tower. This was why most superpowers simply ignored this dark player hub. Look at their guild emblems. They seem to be Zero Wings members, a Tier 2 ranger stated, surprised, after using eagle eyes. Isn't Zero Wing attacking ancient Rock City? Why has it come all the way here to attack the Dark Witch's tower? They must have gotten the wrong memo from their superiors, a level 56 assassin said, laughing. But since they're here, we can have some fun. Blackwater has offered a generous bounty for Zero Wings heads. Normally, Zero Wings members are very challenging prey, but this is a golden opportunity. We have over 3,000 players in the Dark Witch's tower. Wiping out this 1,000-man team will be a piece of cake. We can't let the town's NPCs get to them first. The various dark players present in the Dark Witch's tower didn't take these Zero Wing members seriously in the least. Rather, all they saw as they looked at their enemies were walking sacks of cash. Meanwhile, Dust Edge and Veiled Spirits group had left the Dark Witch's tower's walls and quietly observed Zero Wing's team, astonishment flashing in their eyes. All of these Zero Wing members were merely elites. Aside from the 100 or so players that wore black cloaks, every member of the force was a Tier 1 player. Moreover, they could tell that the 100-plus cloaked players weren't actually combatants, so they were even weaker than Zero Wing's elite members. Big Sis Spirit, is Zero Wing attempting suicide? It's actually attacking the Dark Witch's tower with such a team? With such standards, we won't even need to get involved. The town's usual players are more than enough to eliminate this force, a level 57, Tier 2 berserker said, clicking his tongue as he observed Zero Wing's team. They had come all the way to the Dark Witch's tower precisely because they had heard that Zero Wing might attack the town, but this 1,000-man team was simply disappointing. It would have a painful time just trying to reach the town's gates, let alone destroying the Dark Witch's tower. Veiled Spirit pondered the situation in silence. She couldn't figure out what Zero Wing was trying to do. This is indeed disappointing. I had wanted to give Zero Wing a taste of an evil god's apostle's might, but this team isn't worth the effort. Just let the dark players handle them, Dust Edge said, shaking his head. Since that is the case, there's no longer a need for us to stay. The battle in ancient Rock City is growing increasingly intense. If we hurry, we should be able to claim some scraps. Veiled Spirit agreed with Dust Edge's estimation. They couldn't afford to casually reveal either Shadowclaw or Dust Edge's trump cards. Using them against a 1,000-man expert team from Zero Wing might be worth it, but it would be a waste to use them on a 1,000-man elite team. As Veiled Spirit and the others prepared to leave, the town's dark players were about to make their move. Over 2,000 dark players charged out of the town, not even bothering to organize themselves into any formation as they rushed towards Zero Wing's members. Dark players like them had already participated and grown familiar with large-scale combat. They might have taken the battle seriously if this Zero Wing force had quite a few experts, but all of these players were elites or weaker. Players of such standards weren't worth a serious effort. As the 2,000-plus dark players approached, Zero Wing's elite members began to grow nervous. Guild leader, they're less than 1,000 yards away, a level 55, Tier 1 ranger anxiously reported to Shafong. The dark players charging toward them were veterans of outdoor PvP, and every one of these dark players radiated a dense bloodlust. Over 40 Tier 2 experts ran among these dark players. On the other hand, they rarely participated in PvP, usually focusing on raiding team dungeons. Defeating elite players like them would be a piece of cake for these dark players. Good. Engineering team, begin the assembly, Shafong ordered, nodding. In a moment, the engineering team will be responsible for the offensive. The rest of you just need to focus on defending our position. Hearing Shafong's command, the cloaked engineers removed their black cloaks and retrieved the Hell Tanks components from their bags. When Zero Wing's elite players saw the 100 level 40-plus lifestyle players, they were stunned. They had hoped that these cloaked players were exceptionally strong. They had never expected these comrades to be lifestyle players. On top of that, these lifestyle players were going to fight. When the distant Dark players saw the level 40+ lifestyle players, they were just as stunned. However, their expressions quickly soured, becoming serious. The 100 engineers swiftly assembled 6 colossal tanks, and despite the 1,000 yards separating them, the Dark players could hear the engineer roar as the tank's immense power September over them. Good. 800 yards ahead. Fire at will. Shifeng issued the command once the 6 Hell tanks were ready for battle. Under Shifeng's command, the engineers' eyes glowed with excitement as they operated their Hell tanks. They then aimed the Hell cannons at the Dark players and fired. Suddenly, a crimson, twofold magic array appeared before each Hell tank's gun barrel. Boom! Immediately, the 6 Hell cannons released balls of crimson light. These crimson light balls reached the Dark players almost instantly. By the time the Dark players reacted, the light balls had descended on the disorderly crowd. Boom! 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 The moment the crimson light balls struck, 6 towering pillars of fire rose up amidst the Dark player army, each encompassing a radius of 35 yards. The towering flame pillars were clearly visible from several thousand yards away. As the flame pillars faded, they revealed 6 lava pits on the battlefield, glowing with a red light. Every player that had been caught in the AoEs had transformed into streaks of white light before disappearing. With a single round of attacks, over 600 Dark players had been removed from the battlefield. Chapter 1871 Nightmare on the Battlefield. Chapter 1871 Nightmare on the Battlefield. When over 600 PvP experts were suddenly vaporized, the Dark players charging towards Zero Wing's team slid to a halt and stared at the empty lava pits before them. Damn it! What are those things? After losing nearly half of their allies, the other Dark players panicked. They had seen war weapons in action before, but the Hell tank's speed and power were beyond their understanding of such weapons. The Tier 2 experts on this battlefield even had a high chance of avoiding defense turrets attacks from over 500 yards away, especially the speed-type classes. Yet, despite the nearly 800 yards between them and their quarry, the Hell tank's balls of light had rained down on their heads by the time they had realized that they were under attack. The power of the Hell cannon's attacks was simply horrific, easily rivaling the power of Tier 3 large-scale destruction spells. Even a Tier 2 metric tons would have to activate a life-saving skill to survive such an attack. These Dark players felt as if they stood within 6 magic towers' attack range. The Dark players that had chosen to remain in the Dark Witch's tower to watch the battle had lost the laughter in their eyes. Now, their gazes only contained fear as they watched the 6 Hell tanks. Veiled Spirit, who stood in the watchtower, couldn't help but frown at the scene. The speed and power of the Hell tank's attacks were horrific. Expert players were no more than ants before the monstrous vehicles. Those war weapons were basically mobile magic towers. How does Zero Wing have such powerful war weapons? We're doomed. We don't have any war weapons. How are we supposed to deal with those things? What's there to be afraid of? We may not have war weapons, but the Dark Witch's tower does. Moreover, the town has a defensive magic array. If Zero Wing's war weapons get near the town's NPCs will bombard them with the defense turrets. Besides, with how powerful those attacks were, those war weapons definitely have long cooldowns. Once our people get close to the weapons, not only will we kill Zero Wing's members, but we'll also use the war weapons for target practice. Although the might of the Hell tank's cannons had shocked many people, some more experienced experts retained their cool and analyzed the vehicle's weaknesses, developing a plan to combat the war weapons. Very quickly, the other Dark players also came to realize the Hell tank's weaknesses. Instead of retreating, they resumed their charge in an attempt to reach the Hell tanks. Although they had never used a war weapon themselves, they knew that all war weapons shared a single flaw: they were vulnerable at short range. Like the miniature ballistas bombarding ancient Rock City, once hostile players drew near, the war weapons could be destroyed with a few attacks, regardless of how much destructive power they possessed. The remaining 1,000+ Dark players dashed towards the Hell tanks in a frenzy, intent on destroying the war weapons before the Hell tank's cooldowns ended. Guild leader, they've resumed their charge. Should we form a defensive line? Seeing the Dark players draw closer, Zero Wing's elite members grew restless again. The Hell tank's power gave them some hope of victory, and as long as they protected these massive weapons, they could defeat these dark players. But despite the dark players closing the distance to 200 yards, Shifeng hadn't given the command to defend the war weapons. If they allowed these dark players to engage the Hell tanks in melee combat, they'd be doomed. No. Let them come. Shifeng waved a hand, signaling for his companions to hold their positions. Following their guild leader's orders, Zero Wing's elite members had no choice but to stand their ground, watching as the dark players approached. 200 yards. 150 yards. 100 yards. Brothers, we're almost at the war weapons. Once we destroy them, victory will be ours. Ranged players, attack with everything you've got once you're in range. The dark players couldn't help their excitement as they reduced the distance between them and the Hell tanks to 50 yards. At this time, Shifeng raised his long sword into the air. He then pointed it at the approaching dark players and shouted, "All Hell tanks, move out. Leave none of them alive." The engineers, itching for action, eagerly stepped on the tank's accelerator. The engines roared to life once more, and the 6 Hell tanks jerked forward, speeding towards the dark players in a V formation. What are they trying to do? The advancing dark players were stunned as the Hell tanks raced towards them. However, before the dark players could react, each Hell tank released 14 flame spears. Meanwhile, each flame spear carried power at the peak of Tier 2. A total of 84 flame spears flew at the dark players simultaneously, as if 84 miniature ballistas had launched their payload at the same time, but unlike the ballistas' exploding arrows, the flame spears weren't AoEs. Show! 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 When the flame spears made contact, light flashed among the dark player army. Many of the melee players leading the charge, who had failed to defend themselves in time, transformed into stakes of light and vanished on the spot. Although some players had activated life-saving skills or dodged the attacks in time, surviving the first volley, the flame spears had claimed over 50 dark players' lives. However, the surviving melee players slid to a halt once more, too afraid to approach the Hell tanks after watching that wave of attacks. Ranged players, hurry and attack. Some melee players shouted, snapping out of their daze. The dark-ranked players then launched spells and arrows, aiming for the approaching Hell tanks. Just as the spells and arrows were about to slam into the Hell tanks, the 6 war weapons activated their magic shields. A magic barrier, able to absorb up to 3 million damage and possessing Tier 3 defensive capabilities, surrounded each Hell tank. The Hell tanks pushed through the rain of spells and arrows, receiving no damage whatsoever. How is this possible? Seeing the unscathed Hell tanks stunned the dark players. They had never thought that these war weapons had defensive magic arrays as well. As the dark players tried to think of a way to deal with the enemy weapons, the Hell tanks reached the melee players that led the army. Without slowing in the slightest, the Hell tanks bulldozed through the dark players in their way. The Tier 2 MTS at the forefront were immediately thrown over 20 yards back, their HPs decreasing by nearly half. Unfortunately for them, the Tier 1 melee players died instantly. The 6 Hell tanks charged forward like a herd of stampeding bulls. Not only did they break up the crowd of dark players, but they also killed over 100 players as they sped through. Run! Run quickly! Don't let these things get near you. After watching the Hell tanks slaughter their allies, the fighting dark players realized one thing: this battle wasn't a battle at all. It was a one-sided massacre. It's too late to escape now. Shifeng could not help but shake his head and chuckle as he watched the fleeing dark players. Compared to their ranged offensive capabilities, tanks shone brightest in close-range combat. An intermediate tank had even higher strength than a Tier 3 berserker, and not even a Tier 3 assassin could outrun it. It was truly a weapon of slaughter on a battlefield. After just a short moment, the Hell tanks killed every one of the 2,000+ dark players that had participated in the battle. Now, ownerless weapons and equipment littered the field. Chapter 1872 – Evil God Takes Action. Chapter 1872 – Evil God Takes Action. Once the Hell tanks had wiped out the attacking dark players, Shifeng instructed his guildmates to loot the battlefield. The dark players that operated in the Orc Empire were very well equipped on average. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dared to join the glory battlefield that was the Empire. Fortunately, Chiffon could use the weapons and equipment these dark players had dropped as compensation for the magic crystals the Hell tanks had expended and to make a small profit. Naturally, he wouldn't leave the items for other players to loot. However, Zero Wings members only took action sometime after Chiffon had given the order. They had still been stunned at the Hell tanks' performance. Before these Hell tanks, Tier 2 experts were a joke. They couldn't even escape the Hell tanks' destruction. Despite the 1,000-plus surviving dark players fleeing for their lives in every direction, the 6 war weapons annihilated them all. Zero Wings members watched the war weapons, their eyes sparkling as if they gazed at a piece of top-tier equipment. These tanks are amazing. I can't wait to see how these dark players plan to maintain their arrogance around Silverwing Town now that we have these tanks. I wonder if the guild will give a similar tank to the guild teams. If every 1,000-man legion had 5 or 6 of these things, we'd be unstoppable in the fields. Keep dreaming. How could the guild casually afford to arm a guild team with such powerful tanks? I'd be satisfied if my team had just one of these tanks, not to mention 5 or 6. While Zero Wings members cleared the battlefield of items, they softly discussed the guild's new war weapons. When Chiffon overheard these discussions, he couldn't help his bitter smile. The necessary materials to produce the Hell tank were extremely precious. He had already depleted the materials the guild had fought to collect to craft the 6 Hell tanks before him. If he wanted to produce more, he would have to rely on guild members to collect the necessary materials from team dungeons. After all, team dungeons had cooldowns, and not every team dungeon dropped the necessary materials. Grinding for the necessary materials wouldn't be possible. However, his team members' comments did remind him of something. He could arm the Zero Wing teams that patrolled around Silverwing Town with the Hell tanks. Although doing so would cost a lot of magic crystals and rapidly deplete the Hell tank's durability, it would significantly increase Silverwing Town's security. Current players were no match for these war weapons, and several Hell tanks could end a battle of several thousand players within minutes. After his team had cleaned up the battlefield, Chiffon ordered the 6 Hell tanks to bombard the Dark Witch's tower. Now that more than half of the dark players in the town had died, the remaining dark players posed no threat. All they had to do was destroy the town's defensive magic array. Then they could storm the town and destroy its magic array core and teleportation device. Once those had been destroyed, they would rend the Dark Witch's tower powerless. Zero Wings coming. What should we do? Meanwhile, the dark players who had watched the battle from the town's watchtower wore ugly expressions as they gazed at Zero Wings members. Over 2,000 expert players had died in just a few minutes. To make matters worse, not a single one of them had killed any of Zero Wings players. This was utterly terrifying. These dark players had been confident that Zero Wings members couldn't touch the Dark Witch's tower, much less destroy the town. However, after witnessing the Hell tank's destructive power and their ridiculous movement speed, they realized that the town's defense turrets and arrow towers would be useless against the enemy war weapons. So, this is the trump card Zero Wing has hidden all this time? Even Veiled Spirit was a little afraid as the 6 tanks approached the town. Although she had prepared a trump card, in the form of a magic array that enhanced players' power, she wasn't certain that any player at this stage of the game could stop those tanks, regardless of their buffs. Not bad. It's no wonder why Zero Wing only sent a 1,000-man elite team here. It turns out that they've prepared such a move. Dust Edge gave the Hell tanks a bright smile. I hadn't thought that those players were worth my involvement, but it seems that they just barely qualify. You have a way to defeat them? Veiled Spirit asked curiously as she gave Dust Edge, who brimmed with confidence, a look. Of course. I can also use this opportunity to show you your collaborator's strength, Dust Edge said, nodding. However, I will require some sacrifices. Do you mind if I trouble you to capture some? Sacrifices? Veiled Spirit repeated, confused. I'm talking about players. I need a large number of players. The more, the better. Since this is a hub for the Dark Forces, these NPCs won't mind if players slaughter each other. And the remaining players in the Dark Witch's tower aren't particularly valuable anymore, anyway, right? Dust Edge asked, chuckling as he eyed the dark players as they tried to flee from the town. I'll also need to borrow 2 of your peak experts. My subordinates. Veiled Spirit frowned, turning to Dust Edge with a frosty expression. Although she did not know why he needed sacrifices, it definitely wasn't for something good. She refused to allow her subordinates to become this madman's sacrifices. Relax. I won't sacrifice your subordinates. Rather, I want to grant them peerless strength, Dust Edge explained when he realized that Veiled Spirit had misunderstood his intention. That won't be a problem. Veiled Spirit agreed. She then instructed her subordinates to gather the feeling players in the Dark Witch's Tower. This time, she had brought 300 experts with her, each of which was incredibly powerful. They were far stronger than the dark players who idled in the town. Under Veiled Spirit's command, Shadowclaw's 300 experts took action. Using the tools Dust Edge had granted them, they captured the players that tried to escape the town. What are you trying to do? Why are you capturing us? Shadowclaw's prisoners soon found themselves bound by magical chains, their fear clear on their faces as they looked at Dust Edge and his companions. Oh, it's nothing. I'm just going to make you contribute to the Dark Witch's Tower's defense, Dust Edge said, laughing when he saw over 300 bound players. You should feel so lucky to become a part of my new power. Hurry it up. Zero Wings team is starting its attack. The town's defensive magic array won't last long, Veiled Spirit snapped anxiously as she watched the 6 hell tanks fire upon the Dark Witch's Tower. Although the Dark Witch's Tower had a defensive magic array to protect it, it was much weaker than the one around ancient Rock City. If Tier 3 large-scale destruction spells bombarded it, it wouldn't last long. Relax. My preparations are complete. Now, we just need 2 of your subordinates to stand in the center of the magic array, Dust Edge responded as he finished writing over 30 lines of crimson divine runes in the air. He then merged the divine runes with the crimson magic array before him, excitedly proclaiming, "Soon, you'll get to witness the power of the almighty evil god." At Dust Edge's words, the 2 experts Veiled Spirit had chosen began to panic as they stared at the magic array. However, when their leader urged them forward, they had no choice but to steel their resolve and step into the array. Almighty evil god, I offer you immortal souls. Please grant me an immortal body to smite my enemies, Dust Edge sang before tapping the butt of his staff on the array. The 300-plus dark players inside the magic array instantly collapsed like puppets as their strings were cut. In the next moment, the space above tore, leaving a gaping, black wound. A boundless aura then poured out of the spatial tear, and everything within the Dark Witch's Tower froze within its presence. Chapter 1873 Evil Dragon's Power. Chapter 1873 Evil Dragon's Power. The appearance of the spatial tear above the Dark Witch's Tower immobilized every player inside the town. It was as if time around them had stopped. What kind of monster is in there? Veiled Spirit and the others could not help but be frightened when they felt the horrific pressure flooding out of the spatial tear. They could sense that this horrific pressure did not originate from the spatial tear itself but from a creature residing inside the spatial tear, instead. This was a pressure that they had never felt in all the time they'd played God's Domain. They did not doubt that, should the creature inside the spatial tear come out, they would instantly die and disappear just from the pressure the creature exuded. A few seconds after the spatial tear appeared, the 2 Shadowclaw members standing inside the crimson magic array started screaming in agony, their lung-piercing shrieks giving all who heard them goosebumps. Dust Edge, didn't you say nothing would happen to them? Veiled Spirit questioned, a chilly expression appearing on her face as she glared at Dust Edge. The 2 members she selected were peak experts of Shadowclaw. They were also one of the few Tier 2 experts the adventurer team had. If their accounts were to get crippled due to this incident, Shadowclaw would sustain a tremendous blow. Relax, they'll be fine. In fact, once the ritual is over, they'll feel much better than before. You can even label them as the strongest players in existence in God's Domain right now, Dust Edge explained, laughing as he looked at the 2 Shadowclaw members in the magic array. Veiled Spirit was utterly confused by Dust Edge's words. Just as she was about to demand a clearer explanation from him, the 2 people standing inside the magic array suddenly started transforming. Originally, the 2 people were already tall and robust men. Now, however, Their muscles started bulging rapidly like balloons. Very quickly, their bodies lost their human form. A pair of dark grey wings sprouted out of their backs, and silver scales covered their bodies. The transformation process continued for roughly 7 seconds and produced 2 10-meter-tall dragons. The 2 dragons then let loose deafening roars that echoed throughout the town. Dragons! Veiled Spirit and the others could not help but be stupefied by this sight. They could clearly feel that the 2 dragons before them were different from the pseudo-dragons they had come across before. Although the 2 dragons before them were only level 56 _ the same level as the players themselves _ they could feel a pressure coming from the dragons that was a result of a difference in life ratings. This meant that the 2 dragons before them were not pseudo-dragon creatures but real dragons. They're still not at the level of real dragons. However, they have been given new life by the evil god. Although their life ratings are not at the standard of dragons, they should be at the level of archaic species. You can call them evil dragons, Dustedge said as he looked at the 2 evil dragons. With a hint of excitement in his tone, he continued, unlike lowly evil demons, evil dragons are players. They are somewhat similar to the dark mutation you guys have, but the transformation is more thorough than dark mutation. Moreover, it is also much stronger. At this moment, they are already at the Tier 3 standard. They possess greater power and life force than even Tier 3 NPCs of the same level. Of course, this is not their peak strength, yet my power is still incomplete right now. I'll need many more resources to unlock my strength. Once I have fully grasped this power, I'll be able to make them even stronger. Evil dragons! Veiled Spirit was shocked as she looked at the massive creatures before her. No wonder Beast Emperor is willing to nurture you at all costs. Dark mutation was something she was very familiar with. However, dark mutation raised only a player's combat power. The improvement was not sufficient for a qualitative transformation. The 2 players that had turned into evil dragons, however, had undergone a qualitative transformation. Not only had their tiers increased by 1, but even their life ratings now rivaled that of archaic species. In other words, the 2 players before her already possessed the strength of level 56, Tier 3 archaic species. This was simply frightening. A Tier 3 archaic species was originally already extremely difficult to deal with. After all, the attributes such a monster possessed were simply too much for current players to handle. The only saving grace was that the combat standards of monsters were relatively low on average. They also grasped very few skills. If players cooperated properly, defeating such a monster was still possible. However, a player transformed into a Tier 3 archaic species would be an absolute nightmare for current players. Not to mention, said player would be able to control their new body as if it were their own. Let alone a 100-man team of Tier 2 experts, even a 1,000-man team of Tier 2 experts would be no match for such a player. Just thinking about meeting such a player on a battlefield made Veiled Spirit shudder in fear. The destructive power of such a player would far exceed that of a Tier 4 mythic monster controlled by players. How do you 2 feel right now? Are you still accustomed to your bodies? Veiled Spirit asked the 2 evil dragon players curiously. When players transformed their bodies using dark mutation, they would initially have trouble adapting to their new bodies. Now that the 2 players before her had taken on a form that was nothing like the human body, chances were high that they would have great difficulty controlling their bodies. I've never felt better. Even without concentrating, I can easily grasp the movements in my surroundings. I can even hear the conversation of 2 players that are hiding behind a wall 200 yards away. Indeed. Those 2 are actually planning to report our actions here to other dark players. Those 2 players are simply tired of living. After saying so, the 2 evil dragons flapped their wings, their massive bodies transforming into a powerful gale as they flew toward the 2 hidden players. By the time the 2 hidden players noticed the 2 evil dragons' movements, the latter had already crossed a distance of 30 yards. Before the 2 expert players could move 30 yards away from their original hiding spot, the 2 massive evil dragons had already appeared before them and swiped their claws at them. In the next moment, Dustedge and Veiled Spirit's group heard a loud bang coming from the evil dragon's direction. The ground the 2 level 55, Tier 2 experts stood on shattered instantly. As for the two experts themselves, they had died on the spot. What power! Veiled Spirit gasped involuntarily. Too strong. Too fast. Two Tier 2 experts were actually killed just like that. Even level 56 mythic monsters weren't capable of executing such a clean and swift attack. Meanwhile, the other Tier 2 experts of Shadowclaw also shrank back reflexively. Their reaction was because they'd imagined themselves in the place of those two Tier 2 experts and realized that they wouldn't fare all that much better than those two players, either. They would almost certainly suffer the same fate as that unfortunate duo. Good. Very good. After witnessing the two evil dragon players killing two Tier 2 experts instantly, Dust Edge turned to look at Veiled Spirit and said proudly, "This is the evil god's temple's true power. What do you think? As long as you all have this power, let alone the Or Empire, even taking control of human empires won't be a problem." Indeed. Veiled Spirit nodded in agreement with Dust Edge's words. She, too, felt that the partnership between Dark Soul and Beast Emperor held great promise. As long as Dark Soul had a large number of evil dragons under its command, removing Crimson Emperor and Unyielding Soul from the Dark Knight Empire would be a piece of cake. "Alright, now that you two have warmed up, it's about time we go greet our guests," Dust Edge said, smiling as he turned to look at Zero Wings members, who were close to destroying the Dark Witch's Tower's defensive magic array already. At Dust Edge's words, the two evil dragon players promptly turned to look at the approaching hell tanks, sneers appearing on their faces. Previously, they had still felt somewhat fearful of the hell tanks. Now, however, it was a different story. Following which, the two evil dragon players flapped their wings and swiftly flew out of the town's magic barrier and straight toward the hell tanks. Chapter 1874, Evil Dragon vs. Tank. Chapter 1874, Evil Dragon vs. Tank. As the two dark grey evil dragons ascended, leaving the Dark Witch's Tower, their massive frames, powerful roaring, and the intense pressure they radiated due to their upgraded life ratings quickly attracted Zero Wings' attention. Are those dragons? How does the Dark Witch's Tower have two dragons? How is this possible? They're actually Great Lord-ranked archaic species. Zero Wings members, who stood some distance behind the hell tanks, watched the two massive beasts fly away from the town with astonished expressions. They could not understand why dragons would be in the Dark Witch's Tower. Tier 3 archaic species were an absolute nightmare for current players, and although the two evil dragons were only level 56, they wouldn't be easy opponents. "Guild leader, what should we do? The dragons are too fast, slightly faster than the hell tanks," the engineers controlling the team's war weapons asked worriedly. As engineers, they were familiar with the hell tanks' flaws. Although the hell tanks were extremely powerful against players, they were fairly useless against monsters. Monsters had much higher HP and defense, and if they pitted a hell tank against a great lord of the same level, it would take a considerable amount of time to defeat the monster with the hell cannon and flame spears. Furthermore, a great lord was considered a tier 3 monster, so it would be more than capable of causing substantial damage to the hell tank, depleting its durability. If the two level 56 evil dragons were allowed to fight the hell tanks would definitely lose. Evil dragons? Shifeng watched the approaching dragons with a strange look. He could feel that these two were not actual dragons, but pseudo-dragon creatures. If they were actual dragons, his heavenly dragon's breath would have given him a massive basic attribute boost. Since the fragmented legendary ring hadn't reacted, he knew that these evil dragons were something else. Moreover, he could sense the evil dragons' human-like emotions. When he looked in their eyes, it was as if the two evil dragons were children that had just found a new toy and were eager to play with it. That wasn't an emotion monsters should experience. Zero Wing, die, the two evil dragons bellowed. The two evil dragons widened their jaws and spat a tornado-like breath attack. Space Tor was the attacks flew towards two of the 6 hell tanks. Since the attacks had been launched from a close distance, the hell tanks couldn't dodge in time. Boom. As the two tornadoes dissipated, they revealed the massive craters the attacks had torn in the ground, each encompassing a 50-yard radius with a 5-meter depth. Both of the hell tanks' magic shields had shattered instantly, and the power of the breath attacks left Zero Wings members flabbergasted. Impossible. The dragons actually spoke? Are players controlling them? That can't be right. Even if they are controlled by players, they shouldn't be able to speak. Their destructive power is insane. They actually broke the magic shields that not even hundreds of Tier 1 and Tier 2 players could destroy. Everyone was shocked as they watched the Hell Tank's magic shields shatter, and the battlefield's new craters. The evil dragon's breath attack was clearly stronger than the Hell Tank's hell cannons, but the watching players were more confused by the dragon's ability to speak. Moreover, the dragon's words had been meant for Zero Wing. NPCs and monsters definitely weren't capable of such a thing. So, this is the power of the evil dragons? Veiled Spirit, who stood in the town's watchtower, was just as shocked by the evil dragon's power. With such great destructive power, these evil dragons would be of immense help when sieging a town or city. If Dust Edge could mass-produce such beings, the evil god's temple would truly be invincible in the Or Empire. Ha ha ha. Wonderful. Destroy Zero Wing's tanks and teach those players how foolish they really are. Dust Edge's eyes glowed with excitement as he watched the evil dragons. The two evil dragons were still incomplete, yet they had displayed such frightening prowess. Once he collected the remaining materials and perfected the magic array, he could create even stronger evil dragons. A measly guild like Zero Wing would pose no threat to the evil god's temple, and the temple would claim the Or Empire for its own. The two evil dragons nodded in response to Dust Edge's command, elation filling their hearts. The Hell Tanks, which had slaughtered thousands of dark players like helpless sheep, were now at their mercy. This newfound power was intoxicating. The two evil dragons flew toward the two Hell Tanks, which had lost their magic shields, and assaulted the war weapons with claw swipes. Crap! They're coming. The engineers controlling the Hell Tanks panicked and tried to move out of the dragon's way, but the creatures were too fast before the Hell Tanks could adjust their trajectory. The evil dragons had reached them, reaching towards the vehicles with their massive claws. Boom! The earth beneath the two tanks shattered as dust and dirt flew into the air due to the shockwave. As the dust settled, a new shocking scene was revealed. Dust Edge, Veiled Spirit, and their dark companions had assumed that the Hell Tanks were finished, but the two tanks were safe and sound. The evil dragon's claws had only left a few white scratches on their armored shells. How are they so tough? The two evil dragons stared at the tanks in astonishment. When their claws struck the Hell Tank's armor plating, they felt as if they had scratched an indestructible wall. Their claws even stung from the impact. Even the engineers were stunned. They hadn't realized that the Hell Tanks had such ridiculous defense. The evil dragon's claw attacks had only reduced each of the Hell Tank's durability by 2 points. In other words, the evil dragons would have to land 200 claw attacks to destroy the war weapons. Stop daydreaming. All tanks, ignore the Dark Witch's tower and prioritize the evil dragons. Shifeng suddenly shouted through the team chat. He was not surprised in the least that the evil dragons had failed to do any substantial damage. After all, the Hell Tank's outer shell had been made with Titan or normally, it was a material used to craft epic weapons and equipment. It wouldn't be easily destroyed by a Tier 3 archaic species. However, Shifeng was relieved that he had upgraded the Hell Tank's engines, increasing the vehicle's defensive capabilities. Otherwise, those claw attacks would have reduced the tank's durability by at least 4 points. After hearing Shifeng's command, the engineers promptly targeted the two monstrous dragons. Without hesitation, the two tanks before the monsters fired their hell cannons at the hovering evil dragons. 2 balls of crimson light then slammed into the evil dragons. Boom! The attacks, which had the power of a peak Tier 3 attack, sent the two monsters flying over 20 yards backward as the evil dragons cried out in pain. The two level 56, Tier 3 evil dragons did not possess as much HP as true Tier 3 archaic species. Each only had 28 million HP. A single hit from the hell cannons had devoured over 3 million HP. While the evil dragons flew back, the two tanks' engineers followed up with their flame spears. 14 flame spears bit into the two evil dragons simultaneously, each dealing over -60,000 damage. After taking all 14 spears, the two monsters had lost nearly 1 million HP. The other 4 hell tanks had reoriented themselves by this time, launching their own attacks. With how fast the hell cannons' projectiles were, the evil dragons had no time to dodge the attack. They were only able to block and dodge the flame spears from the other 4 tanks. In the end, the 2 evil dragons had lost more than 1/3 of their total HPs after suffering a round of attacks from all 6 hell cannons. To make matters worse, they were now injured, slightly affecting their combat powers. How is this possible? Dust Edge's eyes nearly fell from their sockets when he saw the massive dent in his dragon's HPs and the unscathed hell tanks. Chapter 1875 Zero Wings Guild Leader. Chapter 1875 Zero Wings Guild Leader. Everyone was stunned as they watched the considerably injured evil dragons. Amazing. These hell tanks are so powerful. Now that the evil dragons are injured, we have a chance of winning. If the guild makes the hell tank available for exchange, I'll purchase one even if I have to go bankrupt. That thing is insane. Even a dragon is helpless against it. If I can use this hell tank when grinding and questing in the fields, I won't have to fear other players at all. Zero Wings members cheered as they looked at the 2 collapsed evil dragons. When they had first seen the evil dragon's prowess, they had thought they were doomed, but they had learned that not only did the hell tanks have the strength to overwhelm players, but the weapons could even contend with the horrific evil dragons. Normally, even a 100-man expert team would have to take the long way around a Tier 3 archaic species, yet these hell tanks had allowed a small number of players to fight 2 such monsters. They would definitely be invincible in the fields if they had the assistance of a hell tank. They were excited just thinking about it. Meanwhile, Veiled Spirit and the others, who watched from inside the Dark Witch's tower, wore gloomy expressions after the evil dragons had been beaten down. They had witnessed the strength of the evil dragon's strength personally. With those monsters' speed and destructive power, dealing with war weapons should be child's play, yet. Just how did Zero Wing get its hands on those tanks? Their defense is ridiculous. Envy and confusion swam in Veiled Spirit's gaze as she looked at the war weapons. She had never heard of such a war weapon in the game before. In her memory, war weapons had high destructive power but paper-thin defense, yet these tanks' defense was heaven-defying. The hell tanks were godly weapons on a battlefield. Meanwhile, Zero Wing commanded such incredible weapons. You too, hurry and distance yourselves from those tanks. Their movement speed and reaction speed is no match for yours. As long as you fight from a distance, those tanks will be useless. Once Dust Edge recovered from his momentary shock, he commanded his 2 evil dragons to take advantage of the hell tanks' weaknesses. At the end of the day, the hell tanks were simply machines that players drove. Players couldn't control the weapons as smoothly as their own bodies. However, the evil dragons were a different story. These players had full and nimble control of the beasts' bodies. In addition, the evil dragons could fly had higher movement speed than the hell tanks. With the evil dragons' capabilities, it was definitely possible to whittle down and destroy the hell tanks without taking any damage. At most, doing so would take some time. The 2 evil dragon players were peak experts. They had merely failed to react to the hell tanks' attacks in time since the war weapons defense had taken them by surprise. Now that they had snapped out of their daze, they did as Dust Edge had instructed and put some distance between them and their targets. Although the strongest weapons of the evil dragons possessed were their breath and claw attacks, their ability to control wind and attack from a distance wasn't to be underestimated. When they flapped their wings, they could create storm blades that carried the power of Tier 3 attacks. Against the hell tanks that were incapable of flight and had delayed reactions, these storm blades would be an overwhelming advantage. They responded so quickly. Shifeng clicked his tongue as the evil dragons moved to attack from a distance. It's a pity that the hell cannon's power is only at the peak of Tier 3 and can't inflict severe injuries to these evil dragons. Otherwise, that round of attacks would have ended the battle. Guild leader, what should we do now? One of the engineers, who drove the hell tank Shifeng occupied, asked. At this rate, those monsters will whittle us down until we die. Since the evil dragons had put some distance between them and the hell tanks, they could now dodge and block the tank's flame spears easily. The evil dragons could also strike with their storm blades. By the time the drivers noticed the attacks, it would be too late to evade. Now that storm blades bombarded the hell tanks, they steadily lost durability. It was only a matter of time before the hell tanks ran out. It seems that we can't rely on the Hell tanks to defeat these two monsters. After giving the matter some thought, Shifeng said, all tanks, group up and take up a defensive formation. Once your Hell cannon's cooldown has ended, wait for my command to fire. We'll launch a concentrated assault on the evil dragons. The 6 Hell tanks then circled, using their flame spears to prevent the evil dragon players from landing casual attacks. For a moment, the tanks' decreasing durability slowed. However, as the seconds passed by, the vehicle's durability rapidly depleted under the dragon's frenzied assault. 386. 357. 324. I'm pretty surprised with Zero Wing. I didn't think it actually had such a trump card. It's no wonder why it dares to raid the Dark Witch's tower with such a small team. Unfortunately, Zero Wing's luck will end here. I want to see how long those tanks can last against my evil dragons, Dust Edge said, chuckling as he watched the evil dragons suppress the Hell tanks. Meanwhile, the Zero Wing members watching from a distance were extremely nervous. Although they wanted to help, they were powerless in this situation. The engineers who drove the Hell tanks sweated with anxiety. 15 seconds had never felt like such a long time. Just as the Hell cannon's cooldown was about to end, Shifeng leaped out of the Hell tank, attracting the attention of everyone present. Guild leader. Zero Wing's members were stupefied as Shifeng suddenly emerged from his Hell tank. The Hell tanks were under heavy fire by the evil dragons, and the shockwave from the creature's attacks was more than enough to kill players, yet Shifeng had left the relative safety of his Hell tank, exposing himself to the evil dragon's attacks. Are they trying to surrender now that they know they can't win? Dust Edge joked when he saw someone exit one of the tanks. The Shadow Claw members were similarly surprised. They could not understand why someone would leave the safety of the tank and put themselves in death's path. The evil dragons could even instant kill a Tier 2 player. As everyone chatted about this reckless player quietly, Veiled Spirit watched with a somber expression. Commander, has something happened? A female cleric asked curiously when she noticed the ugly expression on Veiled Spirit's face. Crap. That is Black Flame. Veiled Spirit shouted after getting a closer look at the figure. She hadn't been able to get a clear look at him since the evil dragon's stormblades had kicked up dirt and dust around the Hell tanks, but after watching carefully with squinted eyes, she recognized the player. Veiled Spirit could never forget Black Flame's appearance. After all, he was the sole reason that Shadow Claw's ambush on Zero Wing had failed so miserably. When they heard their commander's comment, the other Shadow Claw members grew nervous. In their minds, Black Flame's name was synonymous with monster. The man's most memorable feat was his ability to contend with a mythic monster by himself. Although he had only stood against the monster for a short moment, it was a display of strength that countless experts dreamed of commanding. Oh, he is Black Flame. Hearing Veiled Spirit's warning, Dust Edge squinted his eyes as he looked at Shifeng. Currently, Shifeng stood beside a Hell tank, yet the man was utterly unfazed by the evil dragon's frightening aura. It was as if the evil dragons didn't even exist to Shifeng. Sure enough, he really is extraordinary. Unfortunately, even if Zero Wing's guild leader is here, there is no changing the guild's fate here. You too, get rid of him. It's time to put an end to Black Flame's undefeated legend. Upon receiving Dust Edge's command, the two evil dragon players licked their lips in anticipation and fanaticism as they watched Shifeng. He was the most famous individual in the Or Empire. Almost no one throughout the Empire or Dark Soul didn't know the name Black Flame. When they had faced off against Black Flame during their previous battle with Zero Wing, their only thought had been of escape. However, this situation was different. They were now in possession of an evil dragon. They wielded strength that no player could hope to rival. Moreover, their superior life ratings elevated their senses to unprecedented levels. Both players had been some distance from the flowing water realm previously, but now, not only had their combat powers reached that realm, but they were also nearly at the Void realm. They were confident that they could easily defeat this legendary player. They were also extremely eager to fight Black Flame. Black Flame, hand over your life. The two evil dragon players flapped their wings and flew toward Shifeng, madness filling their eyes. Chapter 1876, Slaying Dragons in One Hit. Chapter 1876, Slaying Dragons in One Hit. Upon seeing the two evil dragon players flying toward Shifeng, the engineers controlling the hell tanks grew anxious. Protect the guild leader. Immediately, all 6 hell tanks fired their flame spears to hinder the movements of the two evil dragons. The 84 flame spears shot at the two evil dragons simultaneously. Normally, a Tier 2 player would have no choice but to wait for their death when faced with such an attack. However, dodging these attacks was no problem at all for the 2 Shadowclaw experts who possessed the physique of an evil dragon. Even if their huge bodies prevented them from evading all the flame spears, they could still rely on their claws to block the ones they couldn't dodge. Very quickly, the 2 evil dragon players weaved their way through the flame spears and arrived within 15 yards of Shifeng. They then simultaneously swung their massive paws at him, their silver claws tearing space apart as they sped toward Shifeng's head. Just as the 2 paws were about to hit Shifeng, the sacred sword in his hand suddenly flashed. In the next moment, a massive bolt of lightning cut the space before Shifeng in half, spatial tears appearing in its wake. This move was none other than Lightning Slash, the additional skill of Killing Ray. The moment their claws came into contact with the massive lightning bolt, the 2 evil dragon players felt as if a truck had just hit them. Their bodies went flying over a dozen yards before crashing heavily into the ground, cratering it. Impossible. Is he really a player? Dust Edge and the others gaped in shock when they saw this scene. They simply could not believe their eyes. Shifeng had actually sent 2 level 56, Tier 3 archaic species flying. The shock they felt from seeing this scene was akin to that from seeing an ant flipping over an elephant. The other dark players hiding within the Dark Witch's tower were also rendered speechless at this scene. They didn't even know what had just happened. After all, everything was too quick. All they saw were the 2 evil dragons flying toward Shifeng, then a bright, blue flash coming from Shifeng. Before they realized it, the 2 evil dragons were already tumbling backward. Is he a monster? The 2 evil dragon players wore looks of horror as they stared at Shifeng. A single slap from them had managed to kill a Tier 2 expert. However, when they tried to do the same thing to Shifeng, not only did they fail to kill him, but they also actually lost in a competition of strength. However, what the 2 players did not know was that Shifeng's strength already rivaled a great lord's of the same level. Meanwhile, after continuously producing the forging components for the Hell tanks for the past few days, he was now a level 69, Tier 2 Sword Master 13 levels higher than the 2 evil dragon players. Lightning Slash also provided him with a 330% increase to his strength attribute. Although he still couldn't reach the standard of a mythic monster of the same level, his strength was more than enough to deal with level 56, Tier 3 archaic species. No, that's not right. He must have used a skill that increases his strength. He shouldn't be able to use such a skill often. As long as we work together to attack him, he'll definitely fall. That's right. How could a player possibly possess that much strength? He must have used a powerful skill. The 2 evil dragon players discussed quietly as they looked at Shifeng. Then, they promptly split up and started circling to Shifeng's sides. A lot of powerful skills in God's domain provided a significant boost in attributes. Among these types of skills, berserk skills were the most common. However, there were also certain skills that exceeded one's imagination, such as taboo skills. Such skills were generally kept as a trump card and could not be used frequently. Since that was the case, all they needed to do was continue attacking Shifeng until he exhausted all of his skills. In any case, both of them had a maximum HP of 28 million. They were not afraid of fighting a battle of attrition against players at all. As for the attacks of the Hell tanks, they only needed to be wary of the Hell cannons. The flame spears posed no problems for them whatsoever. As the 2 evil dragon players closed in on Shifeng's sides and were about to launch another attack, Shifeng took out a magic scroll from his bag and activated it. Immediately, a golden-haired woman dressed in luxurious purple robes appeared before him. This woman was none other than Anna, Shifeng's personal guard. At this point, she was already a level 85 yin-yang saint. As soon as Anna appeared, she lightly tapped the butt of her staff on the ground. Suddenly, a yin-yang barrier spread out with her as the center. Boom. The moment the two evil dragons collided with the yin-yang barrier, they felt a power rivaling Shifeng's lightning smash into their bodies. The two evil dragons went flying once again. Everyone, fire at will, Shifeng commanded when he saw the evil dragons tumbling backward. After snapping out of their daze, the engineers simultaneously activated their respective hell tanks, hell cannon and flame spears. 6 crimson light balls and 84 flame spears flew at the fallen evil dragons right there and then. Boom! 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 A series of explosions shook the battlefield. The HPs of the two evil dragons plummeted, falling below the 25% threshold. Feeling death approaching, the two evil dragon players automatically flapped their wings in an attempt to escape. Shifeng's and Anna's attacks might not pose a massive threat to them, but the attacks of the 6 hell tanks were simply too fierce. If the hell tanks landed another barrage on them, their lives would definitely be forfeit. You wish to run? Do you think you can so easily? Shifeng chuckled when he saw the two evil dragons trying to fly away. Right then, Anna finished chanting an incantation and now pointed her staff at the sky. In the next moment, pitch-black magic arrays appeared around the two evil dragons and shot out pitch-black spears. In the blink of an eye, the pitch-black spears stabbed into the bodies of the evil dragons, sealing their movements and sapping their strength. This move was none other than the new over-tier spell Anna had learned, Dark Lock. Due to Dark Lock, the two evil dragons were unable to move whatsoever. Their attributes had also decreased by 30%, which further reduced their already low HPs. On the verge of ordering the hell tanks to fire the killing blow on these two evil dragons, Shifeng suddenly felt a pulse coming from his bag. What's going on? Just as Shifeng was about to inspect his bag to check which item was producing the humming noise he was hearing right now, a broken sword suddenly flew out of his bag. This broken sword was none other than the evil god's inheritance, the weapon that Shifeng dreaded using. System: faint traces of the evil god's power detected. Do you wish to use the evil god's inheritance to absorb this power? Does this sword want me to use it to kill these evil dragons? As Shifeng looked at the broken sword, he could tell that the evil god's inheritance was riveted by the dying evil dragons. He then clicked to use the weapon in order to see what would happen if he killed the evil dragons with the evil god's inheritance. After Shifeng made his selection, the abyssal blade suddenly vanished from his hand, and taking its place was the evil god's inheritance. At this moment, despite Shifeng not having sacrificed any of his attributes, he was actually able to utilize the full power of the evil god's inheritance, the weapon causing his basic attributes to skyrocket. Although the entire process seemed to take a lot of time, in reality, only 3 seconds had passed since the evil god's inheritance started humming until now. Tightening his grip on the evil god's inheritance, Shifeng activated Instant Strike and appeared above the heads of the two evil dragons. He then sent a slash at them. Godslayer. Suddenly, 5 pitch-black sword lights devoured the two evil dragon players. Seen from afar, it looked as if a gigantic, pitch-black mouth had swallowed the two evil dragons whole. As the pitch-black sword lights faded away, the two evil dragon players' HPs instantly fell to 0. Their bodies petrified into 2 stone sculptures, which then disintegrated into dust particles that scattered on the wind. A short while later, all traces of the two evil dragons had thoroughly disappeared from the battlefield. Chapter 1877, Second Evil God's Mark. Chapter 1877, Second Evil God's Mark. As the 5 pitch-black sword lights disappeared, the two evil dragons disintegrated into dust and scattered with the wind. The players spectating from the distant watchtower only reacted after the two evil dragons had vanished. Hey died. Is Black Flame really a player? Everyone had gasped when they saw Shifeng's sudden attack. Although they understood that the two evil dragons had very little HP left, each had held on to over 1,000,000 HP, yet Shifeng had slain both with a single attack. The man's damage was horrific. When the dark players in hiding saw this, they abandoned any thought of killing Shifeng. They now considered the idea laughable and ignorant. It was no exaggeration to say that no player at this stage of the game could survive Shifeng's last attack. Unless they used an invulnerability skill, they would die in an instant if they tried to take on the swordsman. Furthermore, Shifeng had summoned a level 85 personal guard to his side. Anna had only moved her staff slightly, yet she had repelled both evil dragons. With such a personal guard, getting close to Shifeng would be utterly impossible. As for the person responsible for the evil dragon's deaths, he finally snapped out of his daze. What a powerful weapon! Not only was the Godslayer skill was much stronger than before, but the weapon had also granted a much higher boost to his physique. He could feel his strength rival that of a Tier 3 player. Gaining a Tier 3 physique was a qualitative transformation for any player. Once players' physiques reached Tier 2, their 5 senses would sharpen, but when they wielded a Tier 3 physique, their natural response time would also improve. Originally, only talented players possessed the ability. Although ordinary people could improve their neural response time by training, there was a limit in addition. The training process would be intensely arduous, and very few people would be able to endure the hardships that awaited them. However, when players' physique reached Tier 3 in God's domain, their neural response time would improve. Although the improvement was a measly 10% or so, when applied in a high-speed battle between Tier 3 existences, the effects would be significant. For example, if a player with a Tier 2 physique could execute 10 attacks in a fixed time, then a player with a Tier 3 physique and the same basic attributes could execute 11 attacks. This additional attack would allow the player with the Tier 3 physique the chance of landing an attack on their opponent. By relying on the advantage of one extra attack, the player with the Tier 3 physique could eventually achieve victory. This was also why reaching Tier 3 was so difficult in God's domain. In the past, Tier 3 had been a threshold to determine whether a player was a true expert or not. Meanwhile, despite the evil god's inheritance being a shadow of its former self, equipping it had nearly boosted Shifeng's physique to the Tier 3 standard. One could easily imagine how powerful the evil god's inheritance was. It definitely wasn't something an ordinary legendary weapon could compare to. After killing the 2 evil dragons, the sound of a system notification reached Shifeng's ears. System, evil god's inheritance has accumulated sufficient life force and recovered the second evil god's mark. Activating the second evil god's mark's ability. As the system notification ended, the evil god's inheritance began to transform. The blurry divine runes that covered the broken sword became much clearer. The ambient mana also avoided the broken sword due to these divine runes. Naturally, the broken sword's attributes had changed significantly. Evil god's inheritance, one-handed sword. A treasured sword that the evil god had once used. However, the sword had been destroyed in a battle, shattered into 3 pieces. Although the evil god's treasured sword had been destroyed, the evil god's power within remains intact. As long as one gathers all 3 fragments, it is possible to restore the sword to its past glory. This piece is the sword's broken hilt. By permanently sacrificing 8 points of all attributes, the user may temporarily use the sword's power. Although this sword has been severely damaged, it can still exert 1/10 of its original power. First evil god's mark, power absorption can increase strength by a maximum of 120%, stamina by 30%, and all resistances by 120%. Second evil god's mark, soul devourer, can cause tremendous damage to the target's soul. When this fragment is within 3,000 yards of other fragments, the fragments will resonate. Drops upon death. Cannot be traded. Soul devourer? How tyrannical. Shifeng looked down at the evil god's inheritance in his hand with slight astonishment. In God's domain, items that could attack a person's soul were exceedingly rare. After all, the soul was a creature's foundation. Even if a player's soul only received a small amount of damage, it could double the player's death penalty. Depending on the severity of the damage, the affected player might even be prevented from logging into God's domain for several days. If a player's soul were thoroughly destroyed, they'd be forced to start over. This was why any item that could target a soul was incredibly precious. Superpowers treated these items as ultimate trump cards to deal with peak experts. And Soul Devourer was such a frightening ability. Of course, this ability wasn't without a price. To use the evil god's inheritance, Shifeng still needed to sacrifice 8 points from every basic attribute. Although 8 points weren't cheap, if Shifeng could deal a devastating blow on his enemies, the price would be worth it to him. following which, Shifeng stored the evil god's inheritance and returned his gaze to the Dark Witch's tower. He then commanded, "The evil dragons are dead. There is no longer anything in our path. All hell tanks, fire at the Dark Witch's tower. Destroy the teleportation device and the town's core magic array." As Shifeng gave the command, the 6 hell tanks advanced as one on the Dark Witch's tower, firing their weapons at the town's defensive magic array. Although the barrier could protect the town from intermediate Tier 3 attacks, the hell tanks dealt bonus damage to magic arrays and constructions. In addition, the hell cannon's attacks were at the peak of Tier 3. Under the bombardment, the defensive magic array's energy reserves visibly drained. "Commander, are we going to continue this fight?" Shadow Claw's members asked Veiled Spirit when they realized that the barrier was near to crumbling. Originally, they had been very confident of defeating Zero Wing. They were also eager to pay back the humiliation they had previously suffered. However, after witnessing the hell tanks and Shifeng's power, they shed the idea that they could annihilate this team from Zero Wing. "Retreat!" Veiled Spirit growled in frustration, a hint of reluctance flashing in her eyes as she watched Shifeng's figure in the distance. There was no point in staying here any longer. They would only get themselves killed if they did. After all, they had no other means of dealing with the hell tanks. Although several hundred NPCs still guarded the Dark Witch's tower, the tank's defense was simply too high. Even the evil dragons, Great Lord-ranked archaic species, were incapable of damaging the vehicles. How could Tier 2 and Tier 3 NPCs fare any better? By the time Tier 3 NPCs destroyed the hell tanks, the latter would have long since destroyed the Dark Witch's tower's teleportation device and core magic array. When they heard Veiled Spirit's decision, Shadow Claw's members breathed a sigh of relief. They immediately retrieved return scrolls from their bags in an attempt to leave this dangerous place as soon as possible. If they tarried, they might get caught in the crossfire and lose their lives. "Zero Wing, you may enjoy this victory, but the next time we meet, you'll be doomed," Dust Edge said, sneering as he tightened his grip on the 2 shattered, grey crystal balls in his hands. He had lost this time, but the legacy he had acquired was still incomplete. He still lacked a lot of resources. Hence, the evil dragon crystals he had created were not of sufficient quality. However, now that the evil god's temple had partnered with Blackwater and Dark Soul, he was confident that he could create even stronger evil dragons in the future. At that time, his evil dragons would fall as easily as they had today. Dust Edge then took out his own return scroll and teleported away from the Dark Witch's tower. When the remaining Dark players realized that the situation had taken a turn for the worst, they promptly fled the town. This allowed the hell tanks to enter the town unhindered after they destroyed the defensive magic array. Meanwhile, only the town's Tier 3 NPCs posed any threat to the hell tanks. However, with how few Tier 3 NPCs the town had, the hell tanks endured the attacks as they destroyed the town's teleportation device and core magic array, which, in turn, destroyed the Dark Witch's tower. Once the Dark Witch's tower's core magic array had been obliterated, every player in the Or Empire received a system notification. Or Empire Region System Announcement: Congratulations to Zero Wing for destroying the Dark Witch's tower. Rewarding 20,000 guild popularity and 1 basic teleportation device. The system announcement repeated 3 times, its content echoing in the minds of every player in the Or Empire. Chapter 1878, Dark Witch's Tower Destroyed or Empire. Chapter 1878, Dark Witch's Tower Destroyed. Or Empire, Ancient Rock City. A large number of evil beasts and evil demons was currently battering Zero Wing's defensive magic array. Meanwhile, Zero Wing's members were doing their best to wipe out the monsters attacking them. The 200 miniature ballistas were practically firing non-stop. All kinds of explosions constantly echoed throughout the battlefield outside Ancient Rock City. As for the 5 mythic evil beasts, they were fighting a heated battle with the 3 heavily injured divine magic dragons. The battle between these 8 monstrosities had destroyed the terrain around them. No other monsters or players could get within 300 yards of these 8 mythic monsters. Meanwhile, the players spectating from a distance felt their blood boil as they watched the spectacular battle before them. Amazing. This war is simply amazing. Ancient Rock City really does have a lot of evil beasts and evil demons. With the battle having lasted this long, more than 50,000 monsters must have died already, yet the number of monsters on the battlefield doesn't seem to have decreased in the slightest. It really makes you wonder what gave Zero Wing the courage to attack Ancient Rock City. Hey, Zero Wing is plenty amazing already. Can't you see how many monsters are attacking Zero Wing's army right now? If it were any other large guild in Zero Wing's place, they would have long since drowned in that sea of evil beasts and evil demons already. However, even until now, Zero Wing has yet to suffer a single casualty. Although Zero Wing hasn't suffered any casualties yet, the energy of its magic barrier should be close to depletion already. Once the barrier's energy runs out, Zero Wing's army will be doomed. After all, those evil beasts and evil demons are all level 60 and above, with plenty of level 70 plus great lords among them. Zero Wing's 100,000 players simply aren't enough to defeat all those monsters. Right now, the only thing I'm wondering is which will zero out first, Zero Wing's magic barrier or Ancient Rock City's monsters. Many of the spectating players had not expected the battle to escalate to such a point. The evil demons and evil beasts under Beast Emperor's command weren't existences that current players could go up against. However, by relying on its movement-type defensive magic array and miniature ballistas, Zero Wing had actually managed to fight Beast Emperor's forces to a standstill and even shattered Ancient Rock City's defensive magic array. These were feats that were beyond most superpowers. The dark players that were originally planning on ambushing Zero Wing's army, in particular, were now standing at the sides and quietly observing the battle, not daring to set foot onto the battlefield. After all, the fusillade of 200 miniature ballistas was simply too powerful. Each volley of arrows could easily kill several hundred evil beasts and evil demons, let alone players. However, while the independent players were surprised by Zero Wing's performance and had their opinions toward the guild changed drastically, the spectating upper echelons of the various superpowers remained very calm. In fact, some even reveled in Zero Wing's current predicament. Zero Wing sure is tenacious. Unfortunately, the outcome of this battle has already been decided. No matter how Zero Wing struggles, nothing will change. That movement-type defensive magic array costs a lot of magic crystals to sustain. However, there are millions of evil demons and evil beasts inside Ancient Rock City. At the end of the day, Zero Wing is simply too immature to try and use Beast Emperor as a stepping stone to rise to power in the Ore Empire. With this, Zero Wing should also understand its limitations. If it still insists on monopolizing the profits of the secret stone fortress, then we'll have no choice but to have Zero Wing disappear from the Ore Empire. However, Zero Wing has really given us a great surprise this time. I never thought that it could force Beast Emperor to use one of his trump cards. When we try to capture Ancient Rock City in the future, we'll have to think of a countermeasure for that attack first. The spectating upper echelons of the various superpowers sneered as they watched Zero Wing's members. Ordinary players might not know much about Zero Wing, but they did. They had done a thorough investigation of Zero Wing already. They even knew how many magic crystals it cost to use the movement-type defensive magic array each time. Hence, they were well aware that Zero Wing would not last very long against Beast Emperor. Although Zero Wing's performance had indeed surpassed their expectations, that still wasn't enough to convince them of Zero Wing's strength. While this level of strength was above average for a first-rate guild, to superpowers like them, be it the army of 100,000 elite and expert players or the 200 miniature ballistas, destroying these things would not be a problem if they really got serious. It was just that they did not wish to pay the enormous price for doing so, unless absolutely necessary. However, the situation right now was also slightly different. If it were simply removing Zero Wing from the Ore Empire, it was definitely doable. After all, there wasn't just one superpower putting pressure on Zero Wing, but multiple instead. After this battle, if Zero Wing still insisted on monopolizing the secret stone fortress, then it would surely end up getting annihilated by the combined forces of the superpowers. At that time, each superpower would only have to pay a small price to get the deed done. In such a case, they definitely wouldn't hesitate to do so. Big Sis Rain, this is bad. Although Zero Wing is trying to prove itself qualified to monopolize the secret stone fortress, According to the reports we've received thus far, several superpowers operating in the Ore Empire have already come to a secret agreement. As long as Zero Wing refuses to become a subordinate guild of one of them, they will remove Zero Wing from the Ore Empire. At that time, even if we try to intervene, the Great Pavilion Master will most likely stop us in fear of the alliance formed by those superpowers. Blue Phoenix, who was observing the battle at Ancient Rock City in person, reported to Phoenix Rain. According to Phoenix Rain's original plan, if Zero Wing really wasn't a match for Beast Emperor, then they would use the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's identity to back up Zero Wing. If they did that, the various superpowers might decide not to take action against Zero Wing. After all, individually, these superpowers couldn't take down the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion easily. Not to mention, if the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion gained access to the secret stone fortress via Zero Wing, the superpowers would have an even more difficult time dealing with the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion and Zero Wing. However, it was a different story if these several superpowers cooperated. Even the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion would not dare to go up against multiple superpowers simultaneously. Just what is Black Flame trying to do? Phoenix Rain could not help but frown upon hearing Blue Phoenix's words. Meanwhile, inside Ancient Rock City, Beast Emperor likewise received news about the alliance of superpowers. Good. Very good. Beast Emperor's brows arched up in joy when he read the message he just received. Zero Wing, this is your retribution for trying to use me as a stepping stone. I want to see just how you plan on surviving in the Ore Empire now. Although he wished to destroy Zero Wing personally, not having to expend a single troop to destroy Zero Wing was also a good thing for him. Just as Beast Emperor was about to have his subordinates send the two mythic evil demons into battle as well, to put a quick end to the battle, the sound of a system announcement suddenly entered his ears. Ore Empire Region System Announcement. Congratulations to Zero Wing for destroying the Dark Witch's Tower. Rewarding 20,000 guild popularity and one basic teleportation device. The emotionless voice of the system caused Beast Emperor to fall into a daze. How is this possible? How could the Dark Witch's Tower possibly fall to Zero Wing? Beast Emperor instinctively refused to believe the system announcement. Although the Dark Witch's Tower wasn't an impenetrable fortress, it had several hundred NPC soldiers protecting it, including level 100, Tier 3 NPCs. The town was also well equipped with defensive structures. Most importantly, several thousand Dark players resided there. Let alone a 1,000-man team, even an army of 50,000 players wouldn't be able to take down the Dark Witch's Tower. Moreover, he had even dispatched Dust Edge to defend the town. With the evil dragons that Dust Edge created using expert players, he could easily repel even a 1,000-man team of Tier 2 players. Meanwhile, Zero Wing didn't even have that many Tier 2 experts. At this moment, Beast Emperor wasn't the only person surprised by this outcome. Every player in the vicinity of Ancient Rock City was stunned by this announcement. Isn't Zero Wing attacking Ancient Rock City? How did the Dark Witch's Tower become the one captured instead? Did the system make a mistake? Isn't the Dark Witch's Tower a gathering point for Dark players? I recall that there should be several hundred Dark NPCs guarding it. How could it possibly be destroyed? What did Zero Wing do to the Dark Witch's Tower? The upper echelons of the various superpowers were filled with confusion when they received the system announcement. However, after snapping out of their daze, they promptly had their subordinates investigate into the matter. The Dark Witch's Tower might not be as sturdy as Ancient Rock City, but it was still a location that the superpowers were helpless against. Hence, they found it incredible that Zero Wing had managed to destroy the Dark Witch's Tower. After all, Zero Wing's main army was clearly attacking Ancient Rock City right now. How could Zero Wing have any extra forces to spare to attack the Dark Witch's Tower? Moreover, Zero Wing had even destroyed it. Chapter 1879 – Qualifications to establish a foothold. Chapter 1879 – Qualifications to establish a foothold. The sudden news of the Dark Witch's Tower's destruction stupefied the Dark players at Ancient Rock City. The Dark Witch's Tower is gone. What's going on? Pathless frowned when he received the system announcement. Shouldn't Shadow Claw be over there? The Dark Witch's Tower was an important stronghold for dark players like him. It was also the only teleportation point in the Or Empire's southeastern region, serving as an important foundation for dark players to take control of this region. Losing the Dark Witch's Tower meant that dark players would have much more difficulty operating in the Empire's southeastern region in the future. After all, with how large the Or Empire was, traveling around the Empire without teleportation points was very inconvenient. Hence, Dark Soul and the other dark powers normally stationed some experts to guard the Dark Witch's Tower. After hearing that Zero Wing had sent a 1,000-man team toward the town, Pathless had even made a point to instruct Veiled Spirit to bring some of Shadowclaw's experts over. Despite that, he was actually being told that the Dark Witch's Tower was no more. At this moment, Pathless felt as if the system was playing a joke on him. Veiled Spirit had brought 300 experts with her to the Dark Witch's Tower. Even if she didn't receive any help from the other dark players there, with the town's defensive structures and NPCs, she could easily fend off a team of 1,000 players. Pathless immediately contacted Veiled Spirit to find out what exactly had happened at the Dark Witch's Tower. With the loss of the Dark Witch's Tower, Dark Soul would have a much more difficult time dealing with Zero Wing's Silverwing town. This unexpected development might even severely affect the Alliance's plans. The various superpowers also launched their own investigations into this matter, some even offering to purchase the relevant information at high prices. They were very curious to find out just how Zero Wing had destroyed the gathering point that they had been helpless to do anything against all this time. The lucrative offers very quickly attracted the attention of the dark players that had fled the Dark Witch's Tower. They promptly sold the battle videos they recorded to the superpowers. After watching the battle at the Dark Witch's Tower, the superpowers were thoroughly rendered speechless. Although the battle at the Dark Witch's Tower was not as stirring as the one at Ancient Rock City, it displayed Zero Wing's frightening combat power and potential. 6 Hell tanks had actually managed to slaughter 2,000 dark players without taking any damage. The destructive power the Hell tanks possessed could practically rival that of the Magic Tower. Meanwhile, the battle against the evil dragons afterward was even more jaw-dropping. Despite being Tier 3 archaic species, the 2 evil dragons had actually failed to inflict any noticeable damage on the Hell tanks. Even for the various superpowers, this was the first time they had heard of or seen such a frightening war weapon. The Hell tank boasted both heaven-defying destructive power and defensive capabilities, which would make it an absolute nightmare on a battlefield. Of course, dealing with the Hell tanks wasn't exactly impossible, only, the cost would be exorbitant. For example, Tier 4 large-scale destruction magic scrolls. Attacks at the Tier 4 standard would definitely be effective against the Hell tanks. However, the question was, how effective would they be? How many of such magic scrolls would be needed to destroy a Hell tank? Even superpowers like themselves had great difficulty getting their hands on Tier 4 magic scrolls, not to mention Tier 4 large-scale destruction magic scrolls. These things were treated as their guild's foundations. They were tools that should not be used casually. Moreover, the most frightening aspect about the Hell tank was that, aside from being useful in siege battles, it would also be effective in guerrilla warfare. 6 Hell tanks could effortlessly slaughter over 2,000 expert players. In the future, when Zero Wing came across ambushes involving hundreds or thousands of players, it could deploy just 1 Hell tank to fend off these ambushes. With this, trying to whittle down Zero Wing's strength by ambushing its members would become much more difficult. As for conducting ambushes on the scale of parties or small teams, such attacks would simply be a waste of time and resources, as they would not cause Zero Wing any substantial damage. So, this is the trump card Black Flame has kept hidden? Truly amazing. Blue Phoenix was filled with envy after she finished watching the video of the battle at the Dark Witch's Tower. The 6 Hell tanks were akin to 6 mobile magic towers. It was no wonder Zero Wing did not need any direct assistance from the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. One could say that, with these Hell tanks, Zero Wing had the qualifications to establish a foothold in the Or Empire. Although the various superpowers operating in the Or Empire had banded together, there was still a limit to the number of forces each superpower was willing to dispatch. They would not send their main armies to fight Zero Wing in a frontal confrontation. After all, Silverwing Town's defenses were no laughing matter. Even if they could capture the town, the price of doing so was not one that the various superpowers were willing to pay. At best, they would dispatch some members to conduct guerrilla warfare against Zero Wing or economic wars. The appearance of the Hell tanks threw a wrench into the various superpowers' plan of dealing with Zero Wing using guerrilla warfare. As for economic warfare, that was even more impossible. Zero Wing possessed Silverwing Town, Stone Forest Town, and Zero Wing City. So long as the safety of these three money printing machines remained unthreatened, Zero Wing would not lack for income. Now that the various superpowers no longer had any means of dealing with Zero Wing without paying a huge cost, they would naturally give up on targeting Zero Wing altogether. After all, the superpowers were not actually friendly with each other. Every one of them had their own agenda. Unless they bore some deep-seated hatred for Zero Wing, or one of these superpowers lost their mind, none of them would persecute Zero Wing at all costs. Damn it! How did Zero Wing get these tanks? Nine Dragons Emperor frowned as he read the report in his hands. Immediately have someone look into this. Find out how Zero Wing managed to obtain these tanks regardless of the cost. He felt true jealousy toward Zero Wing at this point. When he looked at the Hell tanks, it was as if the doors to a whole new world opened up to him. While expert players were important, tanks could also play a huge role in future struggles in God's domain. Understood. Marshal Dragon nodded before turning around to leave. In reality, Nine Dragons Emperor wasn't alone in having such thoughts. Every major power that had watched the battle at the Dark Witch's Tower basically had the same thought as well. The appearance of the Hell tank signaled the end of the era of numerical strength. The upper echelons of every major power had immediately ordered their subordinates to conduct a thorough investigation into the Hell tank. Meanwhile, over at Ancient Rock City, Zero Wing's members grew ecstatic after seeing the system announcement. They never thought that their guild had actually managed to destroy a dark gathering point without anybody finding out about it prior to succeeding. The Dark Witch's Tower was a dark gathering point that even the various superpowers were helpless against. Moreover, now that the Dark Witch's Tower was no more, they would have a much easier time operating in the vicinity of Silverwing Town. The guild leader did it. Aqua Rose could not help but smile when she saw the system notifications. Since that is the case, start retreating. With the destruction of the Dark Witch's Tower, Blackwater and Beast Emperor had lost a crucial tool against Zero Wing. Without the threat of the Dark players, Silverwing Town's development would recover to its peak. After including the benefits offered by the secret stone fortress, Zero Wing would definitely be able to compete against Blackwater in the Ore Empire. After Aqua Rose gave the command to retreat, Zero Wing's members started slowly withdrawing from the battlefield. Boss, Zero Wing seems to be retreating. Should we give chase? Wind Hunter asked in a quiet tone. Chapter 1880, Descend. Chapter 1880, Descend. Hearing Wind Hunter's question, Beast Emperor could not help but turn towards the Blackwater members and Dark players watching the battle outside of the city. When Zero Wing had begun its retreat, a hunger to take action swept through the two groups of players. Although the movement-type defensive magic array protected Zero Wing's army, it could only withstand up to Tier 3 attacks. Tier 4 attacks would exceed the magic array's tolerance and shatter the array. Although the 3 divine magic dragons had the 5 mythic evil beasts tied up right now, he still had 2 mythic evil demons on reserve. Following which, Beast Emperor gazed at the many destroyed buildings behind him with a cold glint flashing in his eyes. He felt his heart ache as he looked at the destroyed buildings. Although the buildings had only been basic constructions, they were still important for nurturing evil beasts and evil demons. It would cost him a lot of evil gods' temple contribution points to repair them all. Meanwhile, Zero Wing, the cause of this destruction, wanted to get away from the battle without suffering a single casualty. Zero Wing, first, you used me as a diversion to attack the Dark Witch's Tower, and now, you want to disengage safely? Do you think you own this place? Beast Emperor sneered at Aqua Rose and the others' retreating figures. Mobilize all mythic and Grand Lord ranked evil demons. Send in Elder Whales. I want to teach Black Flame how foolish his decision was to send an army up against Ancient Rock City. If he allowed Zero Wing City to leave Ancient Rock City unscathed after this incident, both he and the evil god's temple would become a laughingstock throughout the Or Empire. He could not allow that to happen. Not only did he intend to display the might of the evil god's temple before Zero Wing, but before every major power watching this battle as well. Are we really going to mobilize Elder Whales? Wind Hunter gasped when he heard Beast Emperor's command. He hadn't thought that Beast Emperor would involve Der Whales, the branch temple's Tier 4 NPC in Ancient Rock City. Elder Whales was the strongest trump card Ancient Rock City had at the moment. They had also gone through great lengths to secure a single opportunity to request the NPC's assistance. Initially, they had planned to save the opportunity for their assault on Silverwing Town. He had never expected Beast Emperor to use it here. Of course. I want to Black Flame to learn how foolish it was to send a measly army of 100,000 players to attack my city. If we destroy Zero Wing's army here, the guild's hold over the secret stone fortress will crumble, Beast Emperor said, a hint of madness in his eyes. Although mobilizing Elder Whales now would ruin his original plans, destroying 100,000 of Zero Wing's elite and expert players would land a heavy blow to the enemy guild. This defeat might even be enough to encourage the various superpowers to strike against Zero Wing. Understood. Wind Hunter said, clearly eager. He couldn't wait to see the enemy's expressions when they were dragged to the pits of hell only moments after celebrating a victory. Meanwhile, Blackwater's members quietly observed the battle outside of Ancient Rock City from a safe distance. Commander Scar, Zero Wing has begun its retreat. When are we going to make our move? Finally. This is our Heavenly Eagle Legion's chance to show the Vice Guild leader our worth. I don't think there's a need to wait until both sides are severely injured. We can simply charge in and slaughter Zero Wing's members. Isn't it just a defensive magic array? That Beast Emperor really is useless. He still hasn't destroyed it. The 20-plus players behind Snowscar, a Tier 2 berserker, were growing impatient after such a long wait. If Phoenix Rain were present, she would have been astonished to see these players. Not only were they all level 56-plus, Tier 2 players, but they were also famous experts in the Iron Empire. Originally, they had either been known independent players or top-ranked experts from first-rate guilds. Some were even dark players. Overall, everyone in the Iron Empire was familiar with these players. They all wielded a level of power that even first-rate guilds were helpless against. Some of them even had special means that could cause the various superpowers headaches. Yet, these 20-plus players had gathered here. Moreover, they had joined Blackwater. Why wouldn't this be shocking? Let's wait for a bit. Ancient Rock City should make its move soon. If the situation hasn't changed in the next few minutes, it won't be too late for us to attack, Snowscar said, smiling at the restless group of players around him. Honestly, even he felt somewhat powerless against this group. These people usually acted like lawless criminals in the Iron Empire since so few players weren't capable of challenging them. A few of these players even had the strength to rival him. If they decided to rampage, he wasn't confident that he could stop them. Only Xuanwu Kaishaw was capable of truly controlling these madmen. However, she was also the reason that this bunch had joined the Heavenly Eagle Legion. After hearing Snowscar's decision, the other Heavenly Eagle Legion members fell silent, returning their attention to Zero Wing's army. As Zero Wing's army organized its retreat from the battlefield, over a dozen figures flew out of Ancient Rock City. Upon seeing these figures, the watching crowd, all of whom had assumed that the battle had reached its end, were stupefied. What's going on? Why is a Tier 4 NPC here? There's not just the Tier 4 NPC. 2 mythic evil demons have joined the battle as well. I knew Beast Emperor wouldn't let Zero Wing escape. This is going to be interesting. Beast Emperor is too ruthless. Zero Wing will suffer a massive loss this time. Beast Emperor still had so much power hidden. The spectating crowd was stunned as they watched the dozen or so figures rapidly approach Zero Wing's force. Even the spectating superpowers were astonished. Although there were only a dozen or so new arrivals, the group had enough combat power to capture a guild town. After a moment of silence, Wales, a level 80, Tier 4 NPC, appeared above Zero Wing's army. He then pointed his staff at the sky above him. "Offenders of the evil god, the punishment for your crimes is death." Suddenly, countless small magic arrays appeared in the sky before silvery-gray arrows descended like a storm. Tier 4 large-scale destruction spell, Death's Twilight. As the silver arrows rained down, the defensive magic array's energy reserves rapidly depleted. After a short moment, the defensive magic array's energy reserves were empty. Aqua Rose hadn't even had time to replenish the reserves before the magic array shattered. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the 2 level 80 mythic evil demons and the dozen or so Grand Lord ranked evil demons flew towards Zero Wing's army. Beast Emperor is quite ruthless. We merely destroyed Ancient Rock City's defensive magic array. Does he really need to send a Tier 4 NPC after us? Blackie felt an intense pressure weigh down on him as he looked up at Wales. The man's aura was even stronger than that of a Tier 4 monster, and despite standing so far away from the NPC, Blackie felt stifled. Sure enough, guild leader's guess had been correct. Beast Emperor won't let us get away so easily. Aqua Rose looked at Wales with a bitter smile. She had to admit that Beast Emperor was a formidable foe. There was a reason that the various superpowers had been powerless against Ancient Rock City. Aside from the large number of evil beasts and evil demons under his command, Beast Emperor also had so many powerful trump cards. Elder Wales, please punish these offenders and transform them into nutrients for our evil demon army, Wind Hunter said, laughing as he pointed at Zero Wing's army. 100,000 elite and expert players. The corpses of these players would elevate the evil god's temple's evil demon army to a whole new level. They'd be able to create far more mythic evil demons in the future. As soon as Wind Hunter finished speaking, Wales began to chant an incantation. Meanwhile, the mythic and Grand Lord ranked evil demons charged for the movement-type defensive magic array in an attempt to destroy the barrier around Zero Wing's army, preventing it from erecting another. It seems that there's no other way. Since he won't let us leave, we'll drag him to hell with us. Aqua Rose sighed. She then pulled an ancient magic scroll and a beautiful crystal from her bag. This magic scroll was none other than the Tier 4 continuous use magic scroll, Vulcan's Sigh. As for the beautiful crystal, it was an elemental source Melancholic Smile had acquired with great difficulty after scouring through the various kingdoms and empires. Source of blazing fire, Vulcan's kin, descend. Chapter 1881, Disaster Incarnate. Chapter 1881, Disaster Incarnate. When Aqua Rose activated Vulcan's Sigh, which was powered by the source of blazing fire, darkness suddenly flooded the sky above the battlefield. Following which, a gigantic spatial tear opened up in the sky. Meanwhile, at this moment, the players and the monsters on the battlefield had frozen in their tracks, gazing at the black hole in the sky in fear. What did she do? Wind Hunter, who currently stood on Ancient Rock City's city wall, shuddered in fear when he saw the hill-sized eyeball inside the black hole. Right now, he could clearly feel death looming over him. Let alone Wind Hunter, even the Tier 4 NPC Wales turned pale when he sensed the dreadful aura coming from the gigantic eyeball. He couldn't even move his body right now. As the aura intensified, the black hole spat out flaming meteors. In the blink of an eye, the flaming meteors illuminated the sky brightly. Before anyone could react, the flaming meteors descended on the evil beast and evil demon army, the impact causing countless explosions and screams of agony to resound in the battlefield. At this moment, it was as if Armageddon had arrived as the entire battlefield shook. Among the evil beasts and evil demons caught within the range of the flaming meteors, those at the Lord rank and below were killed instantly. Meanwhile, the meteor shower covered a 700-yard radius at the very minimum. By the time the meteor shower ended, the terrain of the battlefield had undergone an earth-shattering transformation. Aside from the monsters at the Great Lord rank and above, everything else caught within the AoE of Vulcan's Sigh was now ashes. Even the 2 mythic evil demons, which were unfortunate enough to be in the attack's AoE, had fallen into a heavily injured state, their combat power plummeting. In just one attack, more than 5,000 evil beasts and evil demons were killed. The destructive power of Vulcan's sigh stupefied everyone on the battlefield. The dark players that were originally planning on charging into battle all gulped audibly, their backs growing cold as they watched this scene play out before them. That was close. Fortunately, we didn't charge into battle too quickly. I never thought that Zero Wing would actually have such a trump card hidden as well. Had we charged into battle, we probably would have died to this large-scale destruction spell. However, Zero Wing is already at the end of its tether. The number of evil beasts and evil demons killed is nothing to Beast Emperor. How does Zero Wing plan on repelling Beast Emperor's remaining forces? I refuse to believe that Zero Wing still has another magic scroll like that. I guess you're right. Once Zero Wing's members get scattered by the evil beasts, it'll be our turn to make a move. Zero Wing's members are all walking sacks of money. We'll be able to make a fortune if we manage to kill a few of them. Although everyone was shocked by the might of Vulcan's sigh, none of them was an ordinary player. They understood that such a powerful large-scale destruction spell could be used only once. This was merely Zero Wing's last gasp before it got annihilated. It wouldn't stop Beast Emperor's forces from giving chase. At this moment, Snowscar, who was watching the battle from a short distance away, unsheathed the 2 sabers he carried in his bag and commanded, "Prepare to move out." This was the moment he had been waiting for. When cornered, even a rat would bite back at the cat, not to mention a guild like Zero Wing. Meanwhile, now that Zero Wing's last-ditch defense was over, it was the perfect opportunity for them to take action. At Snowscar's words, the eyes of Blackwater's members glowed with excitement and anticipation. The experts of the Heavenly Eagle Legion, in particular, had long since been dying to make a move. If not for Snowscar holding them back, they would have charged at Zero Wing's army already. However, just as the Blackwater members and Dark players were preparing to rush down on Zero Wing's members, a deafening roar suddenly came from the fiery plains created by the meteor shower. Following the first roar, more roars shook the battlefield one after another. Then, the meteors that landed on the battlefield started transforming. The flames surrounding the meteors grew considerably. As for the meteors themselves, they took on a humanoid form. In the blink of an eye, over 500 flaming giants appeared on the battlefield. Even the weakest among these flame giants was a level 75 Great Lord that was 10 meters tall. Meanwhile, the majority of the flame giants on the battlefield were 20-meter-tall Grand Lords. There were also 4 60-meter-tall mythic flame giants. These 4 mythic flame giants looked like 4 flaming mountains as they stood on the battlefield. Everywhere these mythic flame giants passed became a sea of flames. Lava also flowed down from their bodies continuously, turning the area within 100 yards of the mythic flame giants into a lava field. Any evil beasts and evil demons caught within this lava field got burned and lost chunks of HP over time. After taking shape, these flame giants slaughtered the evil beasts and evil demons before them and charged straight towards ancient Rock City. The level 83 mythic flame giants, in particular, were simply unstoppable, sending even the mythic evil beasts flying with a single slap. Meanwhile, the Lord-ranked evil beasts caught within the lava fields formed by the mythic flame giants lost HP at a rate visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, several hundred evil beasts and evil demons had been killed. The battlefield had been turned into a sea of flames as well. It was no exaggeration to say that this legion of flame giants was disaster incarnate. Damn it! Stop them. Quick! We must not let them enter the city, Beast Emperor shouted, his complexion turning deathly pale when he saw the flame giants charging toward ancient Rock City. The flame giants' bodies were massive. If they entered ancient Rock City, the destruction they would cause would be unimaginable. This was especially true for the mythic flame giants. Their entry would spell disaster for the city. Damn it! Zero Wing, just you wait. The evil god's temple will flatten you sooner or later, Wind Hunter bellowed as he glared at Zero Wing's army. Gnashing his teeth, he promptly controlled all his evil demons and evil beasts to deal with the flame giants. Ancient Rock City was the evil god's temple's foothold in the Ore Empire. They could not afford to lose it, no matter what. Although he did not think that the Flame Giant Legion could destroy the entire city, even partial destruction was not a loss they could afford. following which, under Wind Hunter's command, Whales and the two mythic evil demons moved to hinder the mythic flame giants. As for the other evil beasts and evil demons, Wind Hunter tasked them with dealing with the other flame giants. The number of monsters targeting Zero Wings members decreased drastically. Using this opportunity, Aqua Rose activated the movement-type defensive magic array once again. Immediately after, she had the army beat a hasty retreat. At the same time, she also had Flying Shadow and the others recall the divine magic dragons to support the army's withdrawal. Right now, the Flame Giant Legion was more than enough to handle the front line. This sudden development gave the players seeking to attack Zero Wings members pause. With the 3 divine magic dragons guarding Zero Wings' army, no player could poke their nose into this battle. Moreover, Zero Wings' defensive magic array was up again. There were also the 200 miniature ballistas continuously firing exploding arrows. "We're retreating," Snowscar said, sighing as he sent a glance at Zero Wings' receding army. But the other members of the Heavenly Eagle Legion felt unreconciled as they looked at Snowscar. "Do you think you can handle those 3 divine magic dragons?" Snowscar asked as he eyed the 20-plus players behind him. They might be able to do something about the defensive magic array and 200 miniature ballistas, but they would be helpless against the 3 divine magic dragons. Although the divine magic dragons were heavily injured, as they were controlled by players, the combat power they possessed was still above that of ordinary mythic monsters. Not to mention, with the divine magic dragon's basic attributes, all they needed was 1 hit to kill current players. "If we use our trump card, what will those 3 divine magic dragons amount to?" a white-clad Tier 2 summoner argued. "Trump card? Are you all going to expose our Heavenly Eagle Legion's greatest secret without the Vice Guild leader's permission?" Snowscar asked as he shot a cold glare at the Tier 2 summoner. Everyone present promptly fell silent. "Relax. You'll have plenty of opportunities to perform in the future. Not to mention, we got to see Zero Wings' trump cards this time. A guild that has its trump cards exposed is no different from a beast that has lost its claws and fangs. Zero Wing is no longer a threat to us," Snowscar said, a faint smile appearing on his face as he eyed the distant Zero Wing army. When Zero Wing's army completed its retreat from the battlefield, the battle at Ancient Rock City had also come to an end. Although Zero Wing had failed to capture Ancient Rock City, it had managed to destroy the city's defensive magic array and retreat entirely unscathed. Most importantly, Zero Wing had also destroyed the Dark Witch's Tower, an important gathering point for dark players in the Ore Empire. After the battle ended, news of it spread like crazy to the kingdoms and empires neighboring the Ore Empire. Chapter 1882 – Everyone's Considerations. Chapter 1882 – Everyone's Considerations. Dark Knight Empire, Dark Knight City. Many players roamed along the city's streets. Players visiting the city for the first time were awed by its prosperity. As one explored the busy streets, they'd encounter level 55 or above players who wore level 50 secret silver equipment. Tier 2 experts were also relatively common. Meanwhile, Starlink's guild residents sat at the heart of the city. It was one of the most eye-catching sights within the city, and there was always a long line of players seeking to join the guild outside its entrance. Why does it feel like more players have applied to join Starlink recently? I've even heard rumors that players from outside of the Dark Knight Empire have come to join Starlink. That's only natural. I've heard that Starlink has acquired a magic crystal vein, so the guild no longer lacks magic crystals. Moreover, the guild recently cleared a path to the Sea of Trees and can now travel to the area. The Sea of Trees? Are you talking about the Dark Knight Empire's rumored Dream City? Of course. What else would I be talking about? I've heard that the Sea of Trees is a wonderful place, protected by the 6 great primordial elf kings. It also has a passage that allows you to complete your promotion to Tier 2. You can actually skip the regular Tier 2 promotion quest. The passage is also easier than the normal promotion quest, although, once you complete the trial, you don't get one of the main Tier 2 classes, but a special Tier 2 class. A special Tier 2 class? That's right. It's a semi-support class called Traveling Bard. The class is a combination of the Berserker, Elementalist, Cleric, and Oracle classes. How awesome! You can actually skip the normal Tier 2 promotion quest. The Tier 2 promotion quests are so difficult that you're not guaranteed to pass if even with the full support of a large guild. I wonder when we'll get to visit the Sea of Trees. Even if I can't complete my normal Tier 2 promotion quest, becoming a Tier 2 traveling bard isn't a bad idea. At the very least, I'll be much stronger than a Tier 1 berserker. Keep dreaming. That's the Sea of Trees we're talking about. How could it be so easy to visit? Only Starlink, the force responsible for opening the path to the city, can lead a large number of players to it. Why do you think experts from other countries are coming to join Starlink? Everyone's trying to get into the Sea of Trees through the guild. The independent players who loitered in the central district chatted as they watched the long line of players outside of Starlink's residence. Although they, too, wished to join the guild, Starlink was a large enough guild that it could even contend with the various super first-rate guilds. Its recruitment requirements were intensely strict. Not just anyone could join. Meanwhile, a dozen or so Tier 2 players had gathered in the guild leader's office in Starlink's residence. Damn that unyielding soul, they actually secured the first clear of a large-scale Hell Mode team dungeon before us and promoted their guild to 3-star. Lu Xingluo frowned as he glared at the people before him. How did this happen? We've clearly held the lead. How did Unyielding Soul get the first clear instead? Guild leader, based on our investigations, Unyielding Soul has acquired a large number of powerful weapons and tools to increase their raid team's combat power significantly. Those items are the reason that they secured the first clear. Dawn Webb, who was now a level 57, Tier 2 Elementalist, explained. Powerful weapons? How is that possible? The situation left Lu Xingluo confused. Despite its current, dire straits, Unyielding Soul was still a super first-rate guild. Its main force should have already wielded the best equipment in God's domain. Even if Unyielding Soul borrowed equipment from other guilds, it shouldn't be able to increase its raid team's combat power by such a large margin. It's true. According to our spies, the guild has acquired a large collection of level 55 dark gold weapons, Dawn Webb said as he sent Lu Xingluo the information on the weapons. Although these level 55 dark gold weapons are inferior to most level 55 dark gold weapons, they are still more powerful than level 50 dark gold weapons. Level 55 dark gold weapons? How did they get their hands on these? Not even super guilds have such an armory. There's no way anybody would be willing to sell a large batch of these weapons, Lu Xingluo said in surprise. Our spies have confirmed that the weapons came from Zero Wing. Zero Wing must have some special channel that allows it to collect such items, Dawn Webb explained. I've already had someone investigate the guild, but Zero Wing has kept a tight lid on this matter. So far, we have failed to discover the weapon's origin. However, if I were to guess, it is highly likely that Zero Wing's forgers crafted the items. Even the various superpowers are struggling to raid level 50 team dungeons. Other than special quests or high-level field bosses, it is almost impossible for players to acquire level 55 dark gold weapons right now. Furthermore, Zero Wing sold the weapons to Unyielding Soul in bulk. It is very likely that Zero Wing's forgers have managed to create a level 55 dark gold weapon by luck or found the forging designs, mass-producing the weapons. Zero Wing? Lu Xingluo's expression darkened when he heard the name. I've heard that Zero Wing just launched a sudden attack against ancient Rock City. What was the battle's outcome? Zero Wing had already dared to disobey him. Now, the guild had assisted Unyielding Soul, his guild's rival. Due to the assistance, Unyielding Soul had recovered its momentum and become an even greater thorn in his side. Zero Wing has failed, Dawn Webb said softly after giving the matter some thought. I know that. That's Beast Emperor we're talking about. How could that old bastard be so easy to defeat? The old bastard was even lucky enough to acquire a legacy from the evil god's temple, Lu Xingluo said, nodding. I want to know how severe Zero Wing's losses were. There were none. After failing to capture ancient Rock City, Zero Wing used a powerful magic scroll to stop Beast Emperor's army before retreating from the battlefield, Dawn Webb explained. Although Zero Wing failed to capture ancient Rock City, however, the The guild did destroy the Dark Witch's Tower, one of the Dark players' teleportation points in the Or Empire. How? Lu Xingluo's eyes widened with shock. Finding this revelation somewhat unbelievable, he continued, I thought Dark Soul guarded the town. Although he did not know exactly how powerful the Dark Witch's Tower was, even superpowers would have to pay a high price to destroy it since it was protected by high-level NPCs, much less a guild like Zero Wing. Moreover, Zero Wing had been engaged in a battle against ancient Rock City while it had attacked the Dark Witch's Tower. That's correct. During the battle with the Dark Witch's Tower, Zero Wing revealed war weapons that no one has seen in the game before. This weapon operates like a mobile magic tower. It even has extremely high defense. The attack on the Dark Witch's Tower succeeded due to these weapons. All of the various superpowers are looking into it to find a way to acquire the weapons for themselves, Dawnweb reported, nodding. He then forwarded the Dark Witch's Tower's battle video to Lu Xingluo. The ability to produce level 55 dark gold weapons, and now this. Zero Wing is unexpectedly capable. After Lu Xingluo watched the video, his lips curled into a smile as he said, very good. I had simply planned to destroy Zero Wing, but it seems that the guild still has some value. Change of plans. Notify our subordinates to bring me these items. What about the Sea of Trees? We've gone to great lengths to acquire the 8 keys from the Thorn Fortress. Are we going to give up now that we're so close to the final struggle? Dawnweb asked hurriedly. Of course not. We'll deal with the Sea of Trees first then, we'll take care of Zero Wing, Lu Xingluo said. As he looked at the hell tanks on his screen, a hint of greed flashed in his eyes. All right, go, see to the necessary preparations. Understood. Dawnweb nodded. He then led his men out of the office. Meanwhile, in Silverwing Town, the return of Zero Wing's army caused a huge commotion in the town. After all, the battle's outcome had been striking. Although Zero Wing had failed to take down ancient Rock City, the Dark Witch's Tower's destruction ensured that Dark players would no longer pose a threat to Silverwing Town. Including the guild's occupation of the secret stone fortress, Zero Wing had secured the Or Empire's southeastern region. No force would be able to hinder the guild's members now. With the rich leveling resources in the Or Empire, Zero Wing's development speed would skyrocket. For a time, independent players from other countries traveled to Silverwing Town in hopes of joining Zero Wing. Many among them were expert players. Guild leader, the various superpowers representatives have left. They all expressed their congratulations on garrisoning in the secret stone fortress, Aqua Rose said, smiling at Shifeng as he organized and inspected the loot he had acquired from the Dark Witch's Tower. However, Hellfiend from King's Return wore a particularly grudging look when he left. You should have seen how funny it was. It seems that they intend to give up on pressuring our guild. Shifeng nodded. The outcome didn't surprise him. Now that the potential losses outweighed the gains, it was only natural that the various superpowers gave up on targeting Zero Wing. Right, Unyielding Heart has also come to meet you. He has brought a few people with him this time. He says that he has a huge business proposition for you, Aqua Rose said. They're currently waiting in the second floor's VIP reception room. Would you like to meet with them now? A business proposition? All right, let's head over and see what they have to say. Shifeng was relatively curious about Unyielding Heart's sudden visit. He and Aqua Rose then left the guild warehouse and headed for the second floor VIP reception room. Chapter 1883 Set Equipment of Astronomical Value. Chapter 1883 Set Equipment of Astronomical Value. 4 people sat in the second floor VIP reception room in Zero Wing's guild residence. When Shifeng and Aqua Rose entered, these 4 people shifted their gazes toward the door. Sorry for the long wait, Shifeng said. He was already acquainted with 2 of the 4 players, Unyielding Heart and Mu Lingshaw. Shifeng also recognized the other 2. They had been experts that ever-large guild in God's domain had known about during his previous life. One of these 2 was a level 57, Tier 2 elementalist called Long Soul, while the other was a level 57, Tier 2 Guardian Knight called Hunting Blade. In the past, Long Soul had also been known as the Crimson Wizard, Whereas Hunting Blade had been known as the Iron Giant, although neither had ranked on the God's Domains experts list in the past, the secret pavilion had given them official titles. They hadn't ranked simply because they hadn't wanted to. Every superpower had their own secrets, and none of them would display every expert they had. Hence, under pressure from the various superpowers, the secret pavilion hadn't included every expert on the God's Domain experts list. However, the secret pavilion had still provided a brief description of some of these experts. All of the experts that had earned a title had striking battle records. Although Long Soul and Hunting Blade hadn't been as famous as Unyielding Heart, they weren't any weaker than the guild leader. Of course, the two players had only earned their titles after reaching Tier 3 in the game. At this point, few people knew these players' true abilities. Guild leader Black Flame, "You've come," Unyielding Heart said, smiling as he stood. He then gestured to Long Soul and Hunting Blade and said, "Let me introduce you. This is Long Soul, Unyielding Soul's chief elementalist, and this is Hunting Blade, Unyielding Soul's chief guardian knight." "Hello." Both Long Soul and Hunting Blade nodded at Shifeng as they carefully observed the swordsman's every action, attempting to determine Shifeng's capabilities. Shifeng was a large part of the reason for Zero Wing's current success. The guild had even secured a foothold in the Or Empire and forcibly dissuaded the various superpowers from targeting Zero Wing. Some time ago, Zero Wing had even sold Unyielding Soul a large number of level 55 dark gold weapons, which allowed Unyielding Soul to earn the first clear in a level 50, large-scale team dungeon and become the first guild in the Dark Knight Empire to reach 3-star status. It was because of these achievements that Unyielding Soul now had more capital to contend with Starlink in its home empire. Once everyone had been introduced, Unyielding Heart removed a list from his bag and handed it to Shifeng. A quick glance at the list left Shifeng confused. "Guild leader Black Flame, I suspect that you might be interested in the items listed, am I correct?" Unyielding Heart asked, smiling. "You are. Zero Wing is very interested in acquiring these items," Shifeng said, nodding. Every item on the list was a material that Zero Wing was currently trying to purchase in bulk. There were even materials for crafting the Hell Tank among them. Certain materials the Hell Tank required couldn't be acquired from team dungeons. Only a few special maps produced these materials. Unfortunately, the various large guilds valued these materials and usually didn't sell them. Hence, Melancholic Smile could only try her best to purchase these materials from other countries' independent players. Since he had no real reason to hide the fact, Shifeng acknowledged his need for these materials. Any large guild could easily deduce that Zero Wing was attempting to collect materials, after all. Only, these guilds did not know what Zero Wing wanted the materials for. Unyielding Soul is willing to sell these materials to Zero Wing in bulk and at market price, Unyielding Heart said. "You're willing to sell Zero Wing?" Shifeng smiled. "That would be wonderful, but I doubt that's why you're here. If Unyielding Soul only wanted to sell Zero Wing these rare materials, Unyielding Heart wouldn't have personally visited the guild. He could have simply sent a subordinate to initiate the transaction. Moreover, Unyielding Heart had gone so far as to bring the Crimson Wizard and Iron Giant with him. Of course, that's not the only reason I've come. I would like to trade these rare materials for the Dark Corrosion set and Sundial set earlier than planned. I believe the price I have to offer will be to your satisfaction, Unyielding Heart said, nodding as he revealed his true motive. You want to conduct the transaction in advance. Glancing at Long Soul and Hunting Blade, Shifeng realized why Unyielding Heart had brought these two with him today. Unfortunately, I've already informed you and the Phoenix Pavilion Master of the auction date for the two sets. If I trade with you now, I'm afraid that it won't be fair to the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. The Dark Corrosion set and Sundial set were both level 55 to level 60 Dark Gold set equipment. If Long Soul and Hunting Blade could use these sets now, they could be of great help to their guild. It was no wonder why Unyielding Heart wished to conduct the transaction ahead of time. I understand. That is why Unyielding Soul is willing to offer you 70,000 golds worth of rare materials or magic crystals for the two sets. I don't believe that even the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion is capable of making such an offer. If you're uncertain, We can also contact the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion and conduct an impromptu auction right now. I believe the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion won't object to the arrangement, Unyielding Heart said. When Long Soul and Hunting Blade heard Unyielding Soul's statement, their expressions changed. They both wondered if their guild leader had lost his mind. This wasn't the price they had agreed on earlier. Not only had Unyielding Heart asked to purchase the 2 sets for 70,000 gold, but he even offered to settle the bill with extremely rare materials. For that price, they could purchase quite a few sets of individual level 60 dark gold equipment. 70,000 gold in rare materials? Shifeng was astonished when he heard the proposal. Shifeng had to admit that the offer was tempting. He had intended to set the starting bid for the Dark Corrosion set at 24,000 gold, and that price was only so high because the set was meant for MTS. He had thought he'd be lucky to sell the Sundial set for 10,000 gold. At best, he had estimated that he could sell the 2 sets for a total of 50,000 gold. Yet, Unyielding Heart had just offered 70,000 gold for the sets. Moreover, he was willing to pay with the rare materials Shifeng needed to produce the Hell Tank. As Unyielding Heart had stated, Phoenix Rain couldn't match such an astronomical price. The Dark Corrosion set and Sundial sets were only level 60 dark gold set equipment at best, not epic equipment, which could be used until level 100 or beyond. Aqua Rose, who stood quietly to the side, flashed Unyielding a surprised expression. She hadn't expected the other guild leader to be so mad. Now that Zero Wing had garrisoned in the secret stone fortress and transferred a large number of guild members to it, the guild urgently needed a large number of coins and resources. If Zero Wing could secure the resources Unyielding Heart had just offered, this transaction could accelerate Zero Wing's occupation of the Ore Empire's southeastern region. When Unyielding Heart saw Shifeng and Aqua Rose's satisfied expressions, his smile brightened. Although he had offered to purchase the sets at a much higher price than he had initially planned, he had done so to avoid a scene. If he had competed with Phoenix Rain in an auction, the risk of leaked information would increase. Remorsefully, Shifeng shook his head. 70,000 gold is indeed tempting, but please, allow me to refuse, Shifeng said as he returned the list to Unyielding Heart, firm determination in his eyes. Are you not satisfied with my offer? Unyielding Heart was stunned. Long Soul and Hunting Blade stared at Shifeng, as well. They both thought that Shifeng had lost his mind. No one else would offer such a generous price, yet Shifeng had rejected it. No, I find it quite satisfying, Shifeng answered truthfully. Then, why? Unyielding Heart's confidence began to crumble as he stared at Shifeng. Unfortunately, I'm more interested in the Sea of Trees, Shifeng said, chuckling. Chapter 1884, Tier 2 Special Class. Chapter 1884, Tier 2 Special Class. After Shifeng's statement, the room fell deathly silent. This. Unyielding Heart couldn't help but stare at Shifeng in shock. He had never dreamed that Shifeng's appetite would be so intense. Not only wasn't the man satisfied with 70,000 gold in rare materials, but he had also set his sights on Unyielding Soul's Sea of Trees. The Sea of Trees? Questions filled Aqua Rose's mind. She didn't recognize the name, and that made her curious. What was the Sea of Trees that it was enough for Shifeng to refuse so many valuable resources? Moreover, based on Unyielding Heart and his companion's expressions, the Sea of Trees clearly wasn't ordinary. Guild leader Black Flame, if you wish to involve the Sea of Trees in this transaction, Unyielding Soul will have to bow out, Long Soul firmly declared as he stood. It is best if you consider something else. The Sea of Trees was a legendary city in the Dark Knight Empire. Anybody could learn that much after a little research. Besides, it was no longer a secret in the Empire. Many experts had already learned of the Sea of Trees and traveled to Dark Knight City to join Starlink. However, unlike Starlink, Unyielding Soul had no intentions of sharing the Sea of Trees. Hunting Blade nodded as well from beside Long Soul. The Sea of Trees was far beyond Unyielding Soul's bottom line. Zero Wing must be dreaming if it thought it could demand a share of the profits in exchange for 2 dark gold set equipment. Don't be in such a hurry to refuse. Aren't you interested in what I have to offer? Long Soul's reaction didn't particularly surprise Shifeng. The Sea of Trees was a unique secret land, which had been created by the 6 great primordial elf kings. Like Primordial City, the Sea of Trees could provide players immense help, but the Sea of Trees primarily focused on magic research. Players could find many magic arrays that weren't available in God's Domain's NPC towns and cities. Players could also improve their grasp on magic arrays, as well as their spell completion rates. Because of this, the various major powers in the past had placed heavy importance on the Sea of Trees. After the Sea of Trees activated, players would only be able to visit the city if they had a key. As a result, the city's entry slots were incredibly precious. However, as players continued to unlock more of the city's features, the entry conditions would loosen. In the end, the Sea of Trees had become one of the most famous NPC cities throughout God's Domain. Meanwhile, the Sea of Trees' most well-known benefit was its Tier 2 special class, Traveling Bard. As one of the few semi-support classes available at Tier 2, the class had the ability to boost teammates, although the Traveling Bard didn't command high DPS. A Traveling Bard could increase a 100-man team's combat power by at least 15%. This was why the various large guilds had valued this Tier 2 special class. Naturally, Unyielding Soul would have a greater advantage if it monopolized the class for as long as possible. It doesn't matter what you say. We won't budge on this matter, Long Soul growled resolutely. Unyielding Soul had researched the Traveling Bard class in detail, so they knew just how much help the class would provide to a team. As long as Unyielding Soul had Traveling Bard players, the guild could clear team dungeons far faster than other superpowers. As for Starlink and Crimson Emperor, who had also obtained keys to enter the Sea of Trees, neither would share their slots to ensure their advantage over their competition. What if I told you that I have a way to increase players' success rate of becoming Traveling Bards? Shifeng asked, chuckling. I know a little about the Traveling Bard class. I have heard that a limited number of players can class change into a Traveling Bard, 20 per week, I think. Moreover, I don't believe that Unyielding Soul is the only guild in the Dark Knight Empire that has acquired the keys to enter the city. How do you know this? Long Soul stared at Shifeng in shock. The matter regarding the city's keys should have been a core secret that only their 3 guilds knew. Players outside of the guilds should only know that they could become Traveling Bards after visiting the Sea of Trees, but how could such a massive advantage exist without limit? There was indeed a player limit for the promotion quest. Only 20 players could acquire the class each week. Once that limit had been reached, players would have to wait 7 days before they could attempt the class change. Increase the class change success rate? Guild leader Black Flame, do you really have a way of doing so? Unyielding Heart could not help his growing interest. Although 7 days wasn't a long time, it wasn't very short, either. The various superpowers main force members would surpass level 60 after 2 cooldown cycles. At that time, Tier 2 players would not be as much of a rarity. Fortunately, the Traveling Bard's value wouldn't lessen in that time, although the class would be most valuable during the first 2 cooldown cycles. Currently, the Dark Knight Empire's 3 main powers vied for these first 20 slots. If it were possible to increase the class change success rate, Unyielding Soul would have a massive advantage over its competition. Of course. Moreover, my method increases the success rate by at least 20%, Shifeng confidently explained. A 20% improvement. Unyielding Heart gasped. Although the Traveling Bard's class change quest was slightly easier than the usual Tier 2 promotion quest, that didn't mean it was easy. The experts Unyielding Soul had carefully selected to attempt the class change only had a success rate of roughly 50%. If it were possible to increase that by 20%, Unyielding Soul could monopolize the 20 slots. The Sea of Trees' initial entry slots are incomparably precious. Besides, how do we know that you're telling us the truth? Long Soul stated. I don't have any proof. It is up to you to believe me or not. I only want 10 entry slots into the city. I'll also reduce the price for the 2 sets to 50,000 gold in resources, Shifeng said, smiling. For a time, Long Soul was at a loss for words. Alright, I'll agree to your offer on behalf of Unyielding Soul. Mu Lingshaw, who had remained silent all this time, said suddenly. Miss Mu, What if he's just spouting nonsense? Long Soul tried to dissuade the woman. I don't believe that guild leader Black Flame would trick us. Furthermore, his understanding of the traveling bard class isn't inferior to ours in the least. This proves that he knows what he's talking about, Mu Lingshaw said. Since Mu Lingshaw was so determined, Long Soul had no choice but to nod silently. However, as Mu Lingshaw had implied, only the core upper echelons of the Dark Knight Empire's 3 major guilds should know any details related to the traveling bard class. Information leaks should be impossible, yet Shifeng had revealed accurate information on the class. This proved that he indeed knew something. Alright, let us sign a contract, then. Once Unyielding Souls Group had agreed, Shifeng revealed a contract he had prepared beforehand. He then filled in some of the blank areas of the contract before handing it to Unyielding Soul's representatives. The conditions were very simple. Unyielding Soul would give Zero Wing 10 entry slots to the Sea of Trees and 50,000 gold in rare resources. In return, Zero Wing would hand over the 2 dark gold set equipment and the information on how to increase the class change success rate for the traveling bard class. After both sides had signed the contract, Shifeng revealed his method to Mu Lingshaw. In truth, the method was very simple: learn how to produce magic arrays. As long as one could manufacture intermediate magic arrays, players would have a far easier time when attempting the traveling bard class change quest. Although the method was simple, nurturing players to the intermediate magician standard wouldn't be. Hence, Shifeng had only asked for 10 slots. After all, the number of Tier 1 players that could craft intermediate magic arrays was incredibly low. Most expert players in God's domain would be fortunate if they could produce basic magic arrays, much less intermediate rank. Both sides then agreed to meet up in Dark Knight City 2 days before they'd head to the Sea of Trees. When Shifeng had completed his side of the bargain, he received 50,000 gold in resources. These materials should be enough to set up the basic teleportation device. Shifeng smiled at the magic crystals and materials Unyielding Heart had transferred to him. Although the system had awarded a basic teleportation device, setting it up in a town or city required additional magic crystals and materials. In fact, the task demanded 20,000 magic crystals and roughly 4,000 gold in materials. Previously, due to the battle against Beast Emperor, Zero Wing had spent most of the magic crystals it had stockpiled. Fortunately, Shifeng's deal with Unyielding Heart had netted him 40,000 magic crystals, more than enough to set up the basic teleportation device. Immediately after the meeting, Shifeng made his way for Silverwing Town's most popular attraction, the airport. Chapter 1885, Basic Teleportation Device, Silverwing Town, Airport. Chapter 1885, Basic Teleportation Device. Silverwing Town, Airport. Due to the airport's appearance, the previously desolate sector of the town had become a hub for players and NPCs. Many players lingered outside of the airport, hawking their wares or recruiting team members. So, this is Silverwing Town? The players here are so high-leveled. The town's average level can already compete with Black Dragon City's players. Don't you know? Many expert players have come to develop in Silverwing Town since it has become easier to travel here from Starmoon City, and the town's transportation quests offer such bountiful rewards. I've heard that players can even purchase cheap secret silver weapons and equipment from Silverwing Town's transportation firm from time to time. As players left the airport, some couldn't help their surprise when they saw how prosperous Silverwing Town had become. Practically every player roaming the street outside the airport was level 53 or above, with the majority being level 54 and 55. Tier 2 experts were also common. However, the players selling equipment and tools were the most shocking. In Black Dragon City, the Black Dragon Empire's imperial capital, players rarely sold level 50 secret silver equipment. However, on the street outside the airport, quite a few players did just that. Moreover, their prices were 20% lower than in Black Dragon City. Although, despite the 20% discount, the prices were still beyond ordinary players' budgets. Meanwhile, after receiving a brief explanation on Silverwing Town, first-time visitors' eyes glowed with excitement. Based on what they had heard thus far, developing in Silverwing Town would be far more successful than in Black Dragon City. Not only did the town offer many income sources for independent players like themselves, but acquiring level 50 weapons and equipment was also easier here. It was even said that the transportation firm offered level 50 fine-gold weapons and equipment. The only problem was the transportation firm contribution point requirement, and those would not be easy to collect. The airport's benefits are really amazing. It's no wonder why guild towns with airports had quickly become advanced cities, Shifeng thought as he gazed at the crowded street before him. He had never thought that the airport would become so prosperous after just a few days. Although he had told Aqua Rose to increase Silverwing Town's player population limit, he didn't think it would be long before they reached the new limit. If he wanted to resolve this issue, he'd have to upgrade Silverwing Town to an advanced town soon. Although an advanced town was still a town, it was significantly larger than an intermediate town, nearly half the size of a basic city. However, upgrading Silverwing Town to advanced rank wouldn't be an easy task. Aside from the required popularity, neutral towns needed sufficient security to qualify for a promotion. Currently, gaining popularity wasn't a problem for Silverwing Town. With how many players the airport and transportation firm attracted, Silverwing Town gained a large amount of popularity each day. It wouldn't be long before Silverwing Town met the requirement for an advanced town. Unfortunately, doing the same for the town's security would be challenging. In terms of defensive structures, Silverwing Town definitely passed as it had 5 magic towers and a large number of defense turrets. However, any additional defense turrets wouldn't provide much to the town's security. A town or city's security was divided into 2 factors: defensive structures and NPC soldiers. There were 2 methods of increasing NPC soldiers' strength. The first involved improving the soldiers' combat standards. The second required upgrading the NPC soldiers' weapons and equipment. Unfortunately, not even Shifeng had a method of improving the NPCs' combat standards. It all depended on the NPCs the town recruited. All he could do right now to strengthen Silverwing Town's NPC soldiers was improve their weapons and equipment. However, boosting the NPC soldiers to meet the strength requirement for a promotion would require a large number of coins. To reach the security standard for a promotion to advanced rank, 600 of Silverwing Town's 2,000 NPC soldiers would need to wear full sets of fine gold equipment. Currently, only 120 NPC soldiers wielded fine gold equipment. Meanwhile, gearing the remaining 480 NPCs would cost close to 290,000 gold in total. The greatest difficulty other guilds faced when trying to upgrade a neutral town was the town's popularity. During his previous life, the guild towns had generally fulfilled their security requirements long before they fulfilled their popularity requirements. However, Zero Wing was the exact opposite. This was precisely the reason for Shifeng's current headache. Zero Wing simply didn't have enough money. From an outsider's point of view, Zero Wing was quite wealthy. However, Shifeng knew how truly broke his guild was. Just taking care of Silverwing Town's development had drastically slowed Zero Wing City and the Lost Towns. Now, he also needed 290,000 gold to upgrade Silverwing Town. This predicament was the reason he had set his sights on the Sea of Trees. In Unyielding Soul's opinion, he just wanted the traveling bard class to strengthen Zero Wing's teams so that the guild could secure better weapons and equipment. In reality, however, the traveling bard class was nothing to him. The Sea of Trees itself was his true target. As players gradually unlocked the city's various features, the legendary Dream City would enjoy immense fame throughout the continent of God's domain. Thus far, the populace was still unaware that the Sea of Trees was actually a trade city for the various neutral races. Of course, this feature would only become available after players had removed the city's second seal. At that time, neutral NPCs would swarm to the Sea of Trees, and after the third seal was removed, neutral players would join them. At that time, like Blackwing City's passes, the Sea of Trees keys would become more common in neutral races' maps. The keys would no longer be limited to the Dark Knight Empire. Unlocking this feature would also open trade between human players and neutral players. Although there did not seem to be many neutral players in the game right now, when they gathered, they would easily outnumber an empire's player population. After all, many players desired a stronger body, and becoming a neutral race would satisfy this desire. Since no one knew this secret yet, he had to prepare to secure a share of the profits, using this opportunity to make a fortune. It wouldn't be long before the Sea of Trees' second seal was removed, and if he didn't take action quickly, the Dark Knight Empire's three main powers would claim the Dream City's benefits. However, gaining these benefits had a prerequisite. Coins. Lots and lots of coins. Thinking up to this point, Shifeng hurried towards a large, empty shop not far from the airport. This was one of the many shops Shifeng had left empty specifically for the airport. Immediately, Shifeng took out the basic teleportation device and a large number of materials from his bag. He then began to set up the device in the center of the shop's main hall. After working non-stop for 8 hours, Shifeng finally formed the necessary magic arrays and magic circuits, connecting them to the basic teleportation device. As he finished his work, he released a sigh of relief. The necessary magic arrays were not easy to form. Players needed a strong understanding of advanced magic arrays to do so. Creating the necessary magic circuits was even more complex. These magic circuits had to be connected to God's domain's ley lines. Normally, the task required 3 advanced magicians, but since he was Zero Wings' only advanced magician right now, he had to complete the task slowly. Fortunately, he had grasped the production process for advanced magic arrays. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to utilize the basic teleportation device at all. System, you have successfully connected the ley line magic circuit. Do you wish to activate the basic teleportation device? Activate. Chapter 1886, Prosperous Silverwing. Chapter 1886, Prosperous Silverwing. In the quiet hall, the basic teleportation device activated, and magic arrays began to manifest on the ground. A short moment later, a silver, threefold magic array appeared above the teleportation device, glowing with a dazzling light. The moment this threefold magic array appeared, the ambient mana rapidly gathered to the teleportation device. A pillar of silver light rose from the teleportation device, piercing through the ceiling and rising out of the shop. Every player in Silverwing Town could see the commotion activating the teleportation device had caused. As the silver light pillar rose beyond the clouds, it exploded. A silver light then rippled through the sky. In the blink of an eye, the ripple had enveloped all of Silverwing Town. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the silver ripple vanished. What just happened? Was that some kind of magical attack? Isn't the airport in that sector? Did someone just attack the airport? As the light pillar and ripple disappeared, questions overwhelmed the town's players. Some curious players started to make their way towards the airport to investigate. Meanwhile, inside the large shop, Shifeng grinned as he looked at the operational teleportation device. If an airport could attract players to a town, boosting its development, then a teleportation device would bring abundant wealth. This was especially true for Silverwing Town, a town in a dangerous place like the Or Empire. Hopefully, this thing's teleportation range is a little longer. Shifeng immediately inspected the teleportation device. In God's domain, teleportation devices' range wasn't fixed, even for devices of the same rank. The teleportation device's range varied based on its environment. Basic teleportation device's teleportation range could cover anywhere between 500,000 yards and 1 million. The range was vast enough to teleport players across a small leveling map. Meanwhile, the further the basic teleportation device could reach, the larger Silverwing Town's safe zone would be. After all, if enemy players attacked Zero Wings within the teleportation range, the guild could send reinforcements instantly. This was also the reason that other powers rarely attacked towns with teleportation devices. A single mistake could easily lead to utter annihilation. As Shifeng called up the basic teleportation device's attribute panel, the system revealed the device's statistics. Maximum teleportation distance, 710,000 yards. Maximum users at one time, 100 people. Teleportation cost, every 150,000 yards per person requires 1 unit of mana. 1 unit of mana for every 150,000 yards with a maximum of 710,000 yards. Not bad. Shifeng was relatively satisfied with the teleportation device's statistics. One magic crystal yielded between 100 to 130 units of mana. In other words, one magic crystal would be enough to teleport between 100 to 130 people across 150,000 yards. This cost was much lower than an ordinary teleportation magic array. For example, the teleportation house in White River City cost 1/5 of a magic crystal to teleport one player from White River City to the Twin Towers Kingdom, which was 20 units of mana or more. After inspecting the statistics, Shifeng transferred 20 NPC managers from the battle arena to the basic teleportation device. He also set this shop up as Silverwing Town's teleportation point. As for the usage fees, he had set it at 80 copper per 150,000 yards per person. Although the profits wouldn't be astronomical with this price, even ordinary players would find it acceptable. This would no doubt attract many players to the teleportation service, which would, in turn, generate massive income. At the very least, Silverwing Town's teleportation device would earn him more than the secret Stone Fortress's teleportation service. Although the teleportation array in the fortress consumed far less mana than this teleportation device, the fortress's managers only received a portion of the profits after deducting the operation costs. Once Shifeng finished with the shop, he instructed his NPCs to open it to the public. Many players had already gathered on the street outside of the shop due to the airport, and after seeing the silver light pillar, even more players had joined the crowd. The moment the shop opened, a flood of players surged in out of curiosity. What's going on? Silverwing Town even offers teleportation services to nearby areas? I thought only fortresses have this kind of teleportation function. This is wonderful. Traveling into the Empire's inner region to quest is such a pain. Now that I can just teleport there, I'll save so much time. When the crowd of independent players discovered the teleportation shop's function, their eyes glistened with excitement. Although the teleportation price was slightly higher than that in the Empire's fortresses, it was still within ordinary players' budgets. Moreover, Silverwing Town's living standards were far better than that of teleportation fortresses. Not only was the town's mana density incredibly high, but it also had a battle arena, in which players could train. Silverwing Town even had the transportation firm, which offered high-ranked weapons and equipment. The services Silverwing Town offered were no match for teleportation fortresses. As news of the teleportation shop spread, thousands of players fought to use it. In the few minutes since the shop had opened, it had generated 10 gold in profit. The teleportation shop's money-making speed was simply frightening. At this rate, as long as there were enough magic crystals available to continue operation, generating 10,000 gold in profit would be child's play for the teleportation shop. Silverwing Town's teleportation device was even more lucrative than Zero Wing City's 4 towers of elements. Of course, Shifeng had expected this. There were already more players using Silverwing Town's teleportation service than those in Zero Wing City, which had decreased since the players who wanted to travel to the Empire had long since done so. Moreover, most players visiting the Empire were here to develop themselves. They'd likely remain in the Empire for some time. Furthermore, due to the airport's recent construction, many players had opted to travel to the Empire via airship. This further reduced the number of players who used Zero Wing City's teleportation services. In addition, Silverwing Town's teleportation service allowed players to teleport directly to the secret Stone Fortress. Players could then use the secret Stone Fortress's teleportation service to travel to the Empire's inner region. Players who wanted to enjoy both Silverwing Town's benefits and grind in the Empire's inner region would frequently use the town's teleportation services. Including the players trying to enter the town each day, far more players would utilize the town's teleportation services than those in Zero Wing City. News of Silverwing Town's teleportation service quickly spread throughout the Empire. It was enough motivation for players that quested and grinded in the Empire to shift their base of operations to Silverwing Town. Previously, not many players had settled down in Silverwing Town since it was so far from the Empire's inner region, making travel to and from inconvenient, but since Shifeng had resolved this issue, these players would naturally set up their base in the town. Although the cost would be slightly higher, the town's benefits would make it worthwhile. The players operating in the Or Empire's inner region were at least elites, as well, so spending a few extra silver coins each day wouldn't be a problem. For a time, the number of players trying to enter Silverwing Town skyrocketed. Meanwhile, Blackwater's upper echelons and Beast Emperor learned about this recent development. They wore gloomy expressions. They had hoped that the various superpowers would gang up on Zero Wing, but not only hadn't that happened, but Silverwing Town also had a teleportation function now. With this, Zero Wing's control over the Or Empire's southeastern region would grow even stronger. Dust, the item you've mentioned, is incomparably precious. It will definitely be difficult to acquire. If you have it, how confident are you of gaining full control of the evil dragonification magic array? Beast Emperor asked the man beside him, Dust Edge, from his seat in the Evil God's Branch Temple in ancient Rock City. He had planned to use the dark players and bounty hunters to whittle Zero Wing's combat power and financial strength down, but now, this plan would likely fail. He also lacked the forces to launch a direct assault on Silverwing Town. Although Blackwater was powerful, it had recently acquired the Crimson Flame Fortress. It was still in the process of reinforcing its strength and also lacked the power to destroy Zero Wing's town. Currently, Dust Edge's evil dragonification legacy was his only hope. Unlike nurturing evil beasts and evil demons, producing evil dragons only required rare materials and players. I can't guarantee success, but I'm 80% confident I can gain full control over the magic array. Once I do, I'll be able to create even stronger evil dragons. Including the Evil God's Temple's current forces, destroying Silverwing Town should be a breeze, Dust Edge proclaimed, confidence shining in his eyes. We'll wipe all of Zero Wing from the face of God's domain, not to mention removing the guild from the Or Empire. Good. I'll notify Blackwater and Dark Soul now and have them secure the item for you as soon as possible. Seeing the confidence in Dust Edge's eyes, Beast Emperor couldn't wait to see the completed evil dragon. Meanwhile, in Silverwing Town's candlelight trading firm, Shifeng had begun to rent out the shops around the airport. He had set the rent at 3,000 gold per month for small shops and 5,000 gold per month for large shops. Naturally, there were a limited number of shops available, so they would be rented out on a first-come, first-served basis. The moment the guild revealed the rental prices, the town's interested merchant players were stunned. This is insane. Has Zero Wing gone mad for money? Chapter 1887, Foundations Solidifying. Chapter 1887, Foundations Solidifying. Once the candlelight trading firm had published the shop's rental prices, the town's merchant players and nearby bystanders gaped in shock. Crap. 3,000 gold to rent a shop for 1 month. I can buy a shop in an NPC city with that kind of money. Silverwing Town can't even compare to an NPC city, yet Zero Wing dares set the rent so high. Who could possibly afford such a price? If I had 3,000 gold, I could fully equip myself in top-tier equipment. With that kind of equipment, I'd be able to earn back the gold in a month if I'm lucky. It'd be far more profitable than renting a shop in Silverwing Town. For a time, Silverwing Town's players heatedly discussed the astronomical rent. Guild leader, I'm afraid that very few merchant players will be able to afford this price. Many capable trading firms have offered to rent the shops long-term if we lower the price by 30%, as well. Why don't we drop it just a little? Aqua Rose suggested from her seat in the second-floor hall. Truthfully, even she thought that Shifeng's price was a little too high. It might be acceptable for the shops in Zero Wing City since the city had over 5 million player residents. The city's merchant players would accept such a high rent. Even the players that purchased permanent shops in NPC cities still had to pay a 15% monthly property tax, after all. Moreover, this property tax would change based on the shop's monthly evaluation. The tax wasn't fixed based on the initial purchase price. However, Silverwing Town wasn't Zero Wing City. Although it had already become an intermediate town, it could only accommodate a limited number of players at a time. Right now, its player population was nowhere near that of a major NPC city, not to mention Zero Wing City. Tell them that my price isn't that high considering Silverwing Town's current prosperity. If they refuse, we won't push the matter. However, I can't guarantee that the prices won't increase after another fortnight, Shifeng said nonchalantly. Silverwing Town was home to the treasure trove known as the transportation firm, which allowed players to purchase rare items. If players purchased these rare items before reselling them in other countries, they could make quite a profit. In addition, the shops themselves could be used as warehouses to store items. If his plans for the Sea of Trees hadn't required so many coins, he wouldn't have chosen to rent out Silverwing Town's shops yet. Guild leader, I've also received a report regarding the Orc capital city. It seems that Blackwater has removed the seal on the Orc capital city's armory. The various large guilds have already dispatched expert teams to explore the armory. Although we are attempting to do the same, Blackwater's surveillance around the regional dungeon is quite tight. If we approach, Blackwater's members will intercept us. We can't get anywhere near the city, Aqua Rose said worriedly. However, the Orc capital city's armory is guaranteed to contain a plethora of war weapons. If we let Blackwater claim them, it'll be detrimental for our guild's development in the Empire. They've opened the Orc capital city's armory? Shifeng frowned. Blackwater is certainly impressive. The Orc capital city was an Azura mode regional dungeon, which doubtlessly had bountiful resources. Needless to say, plenty of war weapons were stored within regional dungeons' armories. It was a perfect location to secure war weapons for the large guilds that lacked such things. However, since Blackwater controlled the Crimson Flame Fortress, it essentially controlled the path to the Orc capital city. Moreover, Blackwater would have a much easier time eliminating Zero Wings members once they entered the city since the guild had the home ground advantage. If Blackwater truly acquired a large number of war weapons, it would become a detriment to Zero Wing. Zero Wing had solidified its position in the Orc Empire because it had far more and stronger war weapons than other guilds. If it lost this advantage, Blackwater would have a much easier time capturing Silverwing Town. The various superpowers might even take advantage of the situation to strike at Zero Wing while it was down. Based on our reports, the various superpowers have begun to prepare for the amorous exploration. If we fall behind, Aqua Rose felt utterly helpless about the situation. While Zero Wing could sneak some of its experts into the Orc capital city, they could only send in so many before attracting Blackwater's attention. If they didn't send in enough, however, the participating superpowers could easily chase them away. We'll give up on the Orc capital city, Shifeng decided after considering the matter. Give up? But Shifeng's response surprised Aqua Rose. If they gave up on the Orc capital city, Zero Wing's situation would become quite awkward once the various superpowers had explored the armory and acquired a stock of war weapons. I'm not done. Although we'll give up on the Orc capital city, we can still explore other locations. The Orc capital city isn't the only regional dungeon in God's domain, Shifeng said, chuckling. How many Tier 2 players do we currently have? Thanks to the Primordial Souls, our members have had an easier time with their Tier 2 promotions than other guilds' members. We now have more than 400 Tier 2 players, and quite a few players are still attempting to complete their promotion quests. I don't think it will be long before we have 1,000 Tier 2 players, Aqua Rose said, a little excited. Zero Wing already had enough Tier 2 players to rival superpowers, and as time passed, the guild might even surpass the various major powers in God's domain. She had to admit that monopolizing a large fraction of Primordial City's resources gave Zero Wing a massive advantage. Zero Wing had far fewer experts than the various superpowers, but after acquiring the Primordial Souls, Zero Wing's members had a much easier time with their Tier 2 promotion quests. The guild also had an advantage in the equipment its members wore. We have so many already. Shifeng was a little surprised by this revelation. It was far more than he had expected. Currently, the various first-rate guilds were lucky if they even had 40 Tier 2 experts. Excellent. In that case, take Icarus's heart and organize a 300-man team to raid the Salak Mountains. Grind the giant rock beasts there. Kill as many as you can for their loot. It'll also be a good opportunity to level up. However, be careful as you explore the map. Although it isn't an Azura mode regional dungeon, it is still one of the rare Hell mode regional dungeons. The Salak Mountains occupied a level 60 to level 90 neutral map near the Storm Empire. Meanwhile, the regional dungeon was well known for its production of fine Titan ore. Fine Titan ore was far more valuable than Titan ore. Although it could be acquired from 100-man team dungeons, the drop rate was painfully low. Although the fine Titan ore's drop rate in the Salak Mountains was also relatively low, less than 3% for Great Lord ranked giant rock beasts, the regional dungeon was home to plenty of these monsters. However, grinding in the regional dungeon had a condition: players had to reach Tier 2 first. Previously, Zero Wing had only nurtured several dozen Tier 2 players, not nearly enough to grind in the regional dungeon effectively. Hence, he had set the endeavor aside. However, now that the guild had so many Tier 2 players, he could use this opportunity to collect fine Titan ore, which was the main material needed to produce the Guardian puppet. Once he had the fine Titan ore, he would only have to wait until Melancholic Smile had nurtured the necessary master lifestyle players. Shifeng's ordered left Aqua rose a little confused. She didn't understand why he wanted to grind monsters so far from their territories, but since he had given the order, she had no choice but to accept Icarus's heart and do as he had told her. Meanwhile, all 20 of the shops Shifeng had offered had been filled after only a day. Of the 15 small shops and 5 large shops he had prepared, none were vacant. In the blink of an eye, Shifeng had earned 70,000 gold. This dumbfounded many merchant and independent players. They all wondered if the shop's tenants were crazy to spend so many coins on these shops. By the time the appointed date to set off for the Sea of Trees arrived, Shifeng had earned a total of 120,000 gold from Zero Wing's territories and selling the materials he had acquired from the Ice Crystal world. Following which, Shifeng took his money and 9 Tier 1 experts to the Dark Knight Empire's Dark Knight City. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,